Greetings and welcome to On Route 23. I'm Miss Roots.
And I'm Nathan Israel.
I want to start off by wishing everybody a happy new year. It's
2024.
Yes. I hope everybody had a nice, restful, rechargeable transition from 2023 to 2024.
That's it. And also as well, because I know there's just being down to like the whole the festive season. I know people they don't really have much of an opportunity to be able to chill with family, because of the work ethic, work schedule, people that live far and stuff like had family from abroad that was down as well. So, it's just the only opportunity that I have to gather and things like that. It'd be nice here if people can endeavor to do it more often, but in the society that we live in, everyone's occupied. So yeah, I hope you all enjoyed it.
Indeed. This evening we've got with us our resident speaker, Corey, and we're going to be focusing on looking critically at Christmas and the New Year. We don't very often have a look at it from different perspectives, I suppose. We just kind of go with the flow, don't we? We all, buy presents and, plan New Year's Eve parties. And actually, we've forgotten the true meaning of Christmas, I feel. So before we get into any more detail, let me bring Corey up.
Excellent.
Good evening, Corey. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. How about yourself?
Not too bad. Glad you're here.
Yeah, good to see you, bro, again.
But so I was just saying that the whole Christmas period, right? We kind of just walk into it like zombies, don't we? And not really think critically about the actual meaning of Christmas and New Year's Eve. And, a lot of people spend a lot of money on presents and decorating their homes and actually putting themselves in financial difficulty sometimes to make sure they can afford.
I'm glad you went there.
whole Christmas idea. We know traditionally it's based around Christianity, right? But how much of us are celebrating Christmas because of the birth of Jesus Christ, right? And all of the above. So I thought, it'd be interesting to reflect on Christmas. So we haven't been live since 2023, and I thought it'd be a nice idea to start off this year by looking at that time and just gathering up thoughts, really, and allowing us to be honest about how we feel about Christmas. Yeah,
it's true. It's having exactly more of a critical approach about it, because a lot of us know not what we're doing. There's certain things, there's an antiquity behind a lot of traditions that's out there. Certain things that we do blindly, because your family's taught you this. Everyone's because I've been raised doing that. Now me personally, I was raised doing certain things. I thought it was the norm because it was the norm. It's like, this is what we do. But people don't know why they're doing it. They don't know where it came from, the actual roots of the situation. What was going on between then? When was the transition of certain traditions? Because at one point, these things weren't happening. But then all of a sudden, they start to get introduced to society, and then it becomes the norm. But then we just carry on. And then what we do as people, we carry on dishing out that same legacy. So our children's children, you'll never give them the history behind it for them to even understand, do I even really want to do this? Is this for me? But we just do it regardless. The whole monetizing thing as well about the whole presents. One thing that made me laugh, this is before, this is years ago. I was like, why is it that you've gone out your way? A lot of people have gone out their way to spend money to give a gift when 1 week later or a few days later, it's half price in the sales. I'm like, buy them gift cards, if anything, so they can all get more of an activity. But it becomes like more of an idolatized thing, because here's one quote that I kind of question, because some people say like, oh, what did you get for Christmas? What did you get for Christmas? Does anyone ever ask you, what did you give for Christmas? It's all about receiving, getting. And then you're putting someone on a pedestal which didn't go out and do all the shopping. 9 to 5 and 12-hour shifts, yeah, and we give all glory and kudos to Santa. He got it for you. I don't know how he got down, how he went down chimneys, yeah, and he got in a high-rise flat. That would make sense.
Indeed.
You know what I mean?
Indeed.
Come down the chimney. But yeah, there's a
what
lot.
always blows me away is the supermarkets, right? So, you know, it was a week this year, right? Christmas was a week, and when I went into Tesco that weekend, I could not believe the queues. Like, it was just like astonishing how big people's trolleys were full of food, and I'm like, wow, you're gonna consume all that food in 1 week. It's just bananas what people do over that period. I mean, I do get it. You know, it's a family time of year, and you know, everybody treats themselves and buys all the luxury items and whatnot. But honestly, we do, in my opinion, we do go overboard with all of this. Like, is it really necessary to be spending £500 on food in Tesco? Like, really? Do you know what I mean?
And then they're throwing it away like afterwards because there's no one else to eat it. You get upset. Like, imagine people used to do the whole trimmings and go all out, and then they get upset because people ain't gonna finish the food. Oh, you know, I've just gone out of my way. I've bought all this food and you're not eating it. Well, our stomach's only that big. Do you know what I mean? We're gonna we don't want to invoke gluttony and greed.
Yeah,
because that's what it is. You're gonna, you know, even me. I remember every winter I used to put on weight because the food there, you just want to eat it out of courtesy. More chocolates, quality streets, roses, they're all over the place. They're just there. So you're getting your handfuls. Do you know what I mean? So, you know, you can't really, like, if you've gone out your way, you know, just don't be surprised if people can't eat because you're going to overfeed them in it. Remember one time
I don't want to sound like Scrooges, right? Because it's not about being Scrooge and not having the Christmas spirit and all of the above, right? Because I know all three of us are very positive people, right? But it is about thinking about where you're putting your energy and where you're focusing your time. For me, that's what this is. Like, how we just walk into things blindly. You know, this show really is about critical thinking outside the box, and how many of us are doing things that we don't actually really want to do. I know I felt like I was pulled into certain situations over Christmas, having to get involved in certain festive activities, and it's just like, I'm not even into that, you know, Christmas jumpers and, you know, all of that kind of madness. I don't have Christmas jumper. Do you know what I mean?
I'm laughing because I remember the last time I wore a Christmas jumper, which was years ago. Never again. It's not my thing, because at the end of the day, it's one, people end up buying a new one every year, and the one from last year they never wear. You know, some people, some thinking it's you're buying that thing for one day and whatnot. At the end of the day, as you say, the Christmas spirit, it's knowing, if you don't, a lot of people say, oh, it's for the kids, it's for the children. Now you got to also think about, if you've got that whole parenting mentality to make sure your children feel good and feel great and wanted, then you wouldn't have to make them look forward to things like Christmas. You need to have that going on all year round, make them feel wanted. Because what happens, you get certain idolatries that happen where you've got like multiple children and one feels favorited over the other because they've got something that they want, and a whole covetous spirit comes on them. They want something, so all want. It's even as what Mr. Uganda just said as well. There's an emphasis on receiving, and that's what it is.
Okay. Yeah, I think personally, I think that on your points about sort of gifting and people with children from multiple families, which of course I feel for anybody that maybe isn't able to be around the people that they want to be around in that time of year, or around any time of year, to be totally honest. Like you said, it's about spending time with good connections to those that you love and love you, if possible. I think regarding the sort of jealousy and the whole coveting situation, I think that, that situation may be sometimes focused on possibly or exacerbated slightly during solstice. Although, if we're honest, those situations do happen all year round. And I think by fostering healthy relationships, we can learn to appreciate other people receiving things and enjoy their joy of receiving, as well as for ourselves. And I think so that's probably a really important thing for us to know also. I think that we mentioned before, Ms. Rootz, about the giving and about the whole sort of what's it about. I think that, yeah, I think there are I think the fundamentals sometimes get lost amongst all the tinsel and the bulbils and all the other glitz and glam. I think often sometimes the fundamentals can get lost. And I think that, although I hate to get a bit, or maybe it's a bit corny, I'm not sure, but hop back to the sort of the whole Scrooge thing,
Yeah.
and about reminding ourselves about what the most important thing was. And in that movie there, it should depict it actually that it was about him spending time in a loving environment. He was with a family that didn't have very much. Granted, he brought some food with him, but just each other's company was keeping their hearts warm.
Yeah.
And I think that's really, I think that movie just does attempt to sort of really epitomise not just what that time of year should be particularly, but all feasts and family gatherings should really be about. And I think this time of year, previously, I think that there's another element as well to this, is where I think we mentioned about I think maybe mentioned this comment, Nathan. I think that is it seasonal
Sad,
yeah, seasonal associated disorder, is it?
Oh yes.
Right now. So
yeah.
So I was going to reference that right now. Seasonal affective disorder. Okay, and so these are obviously things that are and have been present not just right now in modern times, but I guess in previous times also. And so a lot of the idea of, like you said, Ms. Root, about being merry and enjoying the time, it's really about sort of balancing that sort of aspects for those that do suffer that. But the ones that don't suffer it, sharing some of that love, some of that warmth, and helping them maintain and get through what could sometimes be quite a challenging time for a lot of people. Even if they have all the money in the world, all the gifts in the world, all the backing and support in the world, it doesn't mean that they're happy.
Indeed.
I think the Scrooge element was a great aspect of that. He had all the wealth and material things in the world that he wanted, but that didn't bring him happiness.
Right. I just want to emphasize this comment here, and I want to welcome Mr. Uganda. I don't think I've seen him on our live sessions before, but he's just emphasizing that at work. Work is the place I was thinking of when I was reflecting. They tried to make us all endorse Christmas, Secret Santa, and there was a lot of chocolate and mince pies around.
No temptation.
If you say no, it's offensive, right? Have a mince pie.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean?
Do you like mince pies though?
Yes, I do like them, but one is enough. Like for the whole of that Christmas period, there was mince pies all the time, and I really want to eat mince pies all the time. I mean, that's just one thing. The chocolates, and also, we had a Christmas meal, a Christmas dinner kind of thing, and one of the things that was recommended is everybody wear your Christmas jumper, and I'm like, oh my God, I don't even have a Christmas jumper, right? So, but as I say, I don't want to be sounding negative or anything. Like, it was all nice, and it does build rapport at that time of year within my team. It was fun, it was nice, but we can do that in another way as well. It doesn't, I just felt like I got pulled into these festive activities, and my colleagues went all out. They had like Santa glasses, Santa rings, like the whole everything, and I don't know.
And that's it. I'm glad you said that as well, Mr. Rootz, about like in the work environment, and thank you as well, Mr. Uganda, for bringing it up, because being pulled into it, because I remember, like, when I stopped, getting involved with certain festivities, as you said, Mr. Rootz, about the report thing, like, the relationship, that your work relationship, like your boss or the colleagues. If you decline these things in this season when they're in the spirit, they'll look at you different. People get promoted or even demoted in this situation because of choices. There's certain people religiously that don't even follow the religion. The fact that they had to because they don't want to feel left out at work. Like the following few days, oh, that's the person that didn't turn up to the work do. The Christmas do that they do, like they all go out for meal, and because you declined it, they don't look at it the same. You've got no connection with the rest of your colleagues. You feel like an outcast just because you're not following their traditions.
Yeah, you get pushed out.
Yeah.
Here's another good point here. Mince pies. You only really see them on the shelves during Christmas, right? If you really do like mince pies, like why can't you buy them on an average day? Why are turkeys only really?
On a normal day, they are there. The thing is, they are there on a normal day. People just turn a blind eye to it because obviously obviously now they're off the shelf, as Mr. Young said, because people have now gone and bought them like toilet roll during lockdown. Do you know what I mean? So, but
I'm not sure I see mince pies during the summer though. Yeah. I'm not sure I see mince pies on the shelf. Say
no, I don't either.
You don't see them because they don't. It's not mass advertised. It's there because you can go and buy mince pies all year round. It's just that they'll mass advertise it. So you see big blocks, big sections will take over like half an aisle. But then the rest of the year, it's just disappeared again. It's just there with the rest of the stuff, like a pack of digestive biscuits.
I mean,
but it's there. It's just, I don't know.
I'm going to keep an eye out this year for that. Because like I said, usually I would say that I do think I would agree with Miss Rootz that they keep them very seasonal, and like literally whether they start making them after sort of November and they don't start making them again until the following September time, I'm not too sure. But like, I would say during sort of summer and stuff, I genuinely would say I don't see them on the shelves in the same way that right now I've just noticed that mini eggs are on the shelves right now. Cadbury's mini eggs.
Yeah.
Oh, they've started that already because we're not putting next in it.
And Easter eggs, for example, as well. I think so. I think some of the things that was really happening here is that retail has become very seasonal, and I feel like it's like something. Maybe in order for us to make the most of this moment, we have to also let it go a little bit at times too. Yeah. So we get to enjoy the summer. We let the summer go. We get to enjoy the winter. We let the winter go. Also, we allow ourselves to change through the seasons, as we kind of do for the night. I'm talking about that from a capitalist retail perspective. Yes. I think that if they try to push mince pies like that all year round, I think the sales probably would probably drop. Possibly, I think they
deteriorate exactly. It will deteriorate. It's like another example: hot cross buns. You can get them all year round, but they're just not glorified. They're not stocked up on the shelves heavily, but you can still get them today. But it's not around Easter time yet.
I think companies do specialize in them, like they specialize in Christmas pudding and stuff. In the same way that you can get strawberries all year round, possibly, and certain berries all year round these days, although they don't always grow in every region all year round, they get imported and stuff.
Yeah.
So if that doesn't get bananas in winter, would be an example of that. Where they're coming from? It's winter. Where bananas coming from? And so we do live in a world where we are globalized and connected. So we are going to have tropical fruits in the winter time now, and possibly other seasonal food types in the summer that wouldn't usually be there also. I think as a whole, other than for fruit actually, because I think bananas are pretty consistent in the market. They sell all year round, generally speaking. But I think with some seasonal foods, like Easter eggs, could say coming up soon, and mince pies, for example, and Christmas pudding. I mean, I personally do enjoy a good Christmas pudding. I've got to say, they are quite delicious. Good ones are amazing, and I think
rum sauce or something.
Well, often I don't have much alcohol in that I'm aware of now, but I mean, I have had one with alcohol. But I think it's the density of fruit sugars and fibers, and there's a lot of goodness in those. I mean, in those Christmas puddings, heck of a lot of goodness. They used to put even a bit of peel in there before, potentially. So there were powerhouses of nutrients essentially. And the tradition of boiled cakes, believe it or not, is a long-standing tradition in cold weather countries. Not just cold weather countries though, but you know about boiled cakes. You guys know about boiled cakes?
Boiled cakes, boiled.
Boiled cakes.
Like steamed cakes.
Boiled cakes. Them now, but traditionally used to make the mix. They used to put the like a cloth or tablecloth into like a mixing bowl, fill a mixing bowl, press it tight into a knot, and then like obviously boil it or steam it in a pot.
Yeah.
And that was how the traditional dome shape kind of came from sort of using the mixing pot itself for the whole sort of shaping of the cake.
Right.
And when you think about these types of cakes, and even sort of like even traditional breads, even that people tend to like break bread and stuff. These a lot of these traditions, say boiled cakes and those type of breads, actually are very, very old in tradition itself. In its actual practice, you do know that humans would have been making cakes a long, long time ago. There's a lot more added to that now, I would say, regarding how we currently practice it. And I think some of the core values of that are missed. So one of the core values, I think, of how we feast during this time of year is often missed. So I'm being definitely mentioned gluttony. And I think we sent you that link. Remember that link we sent about sort of mitochondrial dense cells?
Yeah.
Now, if you watch that, you kind of know about that. There's a reason why in the cold weather we tend to eat more. Yeah, because our body utilizes more calories essentially to maintain the thermostatic equilibrium and homeostasis. So the reason why we feast more and like this during these times of year is because, well, we haven't always necessarily had great central heating. We haven't always necessarily had the greatest access to cloth fiber or warm weather clothes. North Face down jackets haven't always been a thing, for example. Other brands are available. And so in this time of year, eating would have been one of the most crucial ways to sort of maintain and survive. Well, eating extra calories, I would say, would have been a really crucial way of maintaining and surviving. And then on top of that, things like in the Christmas pudding, for example, with all those extra nutrients and natural sugars and extra vitamin C and antioxidants that are all rich in that type of cake, would have been a great way of fending off the flu and other types of potential cold weather thriving microbials.
So let's go back a little bit then, and let's create some sort of structure now. Yeah. The talk about supermarkets and products that are available during seasonal periods, and its links to capitalism, right? Let's talk about Christmas and capitalism. Yeah, let's talk about Santa, right? Who is Santa? Where did Santa come from, and how has he become such a huge icon? Is it okay to tell your children that Santa is real?
Okay.
What do you think?
Go on, you go first. So I'll tell you about my experience with my daughter.
Point in itself. I think that's actually a really, really good point in itself, because I think that there are levels to this. I would say there are quite a few levels. One level is the idea that there's an element of childhood betrayal syndrome. I'm butchering the terminology here, but basically it talks about the point at which children no longer believe or trust in their parents in many areas, because they may have been deceitful to them about some crucial things throughout their entire life. And so there are useful research which suggests actually talking about things in the world in an honest, open way is the most healthiest, we would say, psychologically for a child. And if your child's being naughty, you should be explaining them the morality of that behavior, rather than using Santa or Krampus or any other type of idea, I will say, to sort of parent for you. So there is that element of it, sort of the whole sort of psychological and the entrusting and the parental bond relationship between a child and parent. But we talk about that. We can talk about that. We might talk about it also in other areas, whether that be the Tooth Fairy, the Easter Bunny, and many other areas there too. And if I'm honest, even now some people had to talk about sex, for example, or about other things in society where it's not spoke about.
What about the stork that carries babies?
Well, it could be
about the stork. The stork carrying a baby. You know what I mean? Even that. Come on. Like, I mean, I'm glad that you said this. I'm glad you said that, Corey, because the same thing with my daughter. I remember one time I had a book. It was given to me. It's called The Night Before Christmas. On the front of it, there was a picture of Santa. And I showed my daughter. My daughter started screaming. She could not stand that face. And then she kept saying, "Daddy, can I see the picture again?" So then I told her, basically, and when she asked me the questions now, and I said, "Look, basically, people believe that this person comes down and gives you, gives you presents every year, this and that and the third. Some people believe it, but I'm telling you now, the dude's not as real as how it's perceived here, all right?" And then, but I told her, but at school, people are going to believe it. Don't push your agenda, or don't push it up because people actually genuinely believe. And I don't want to corrupt what other parents are telling them. Do you know what I mean? Because then it can cause fights, bullying, this and that, and the third at school just over Santa. But you know, the worst part that comes after, when they actually grow up and realize the truth about these mythological beings, if anything, right, or these idols, they pass the legacy of lies down because they've been told the lie, but then they're going to teach it again, knowing it's a lie. And which is a bit scary in some shape, because you know you teach them kids, be honest, don't lie to me, tell the truth. But then what kind of demonstration are we giving them? Are we actually practicing what we're preaching, especially as parents?
It's really interesting because it's not just the parents. Like, if you look at primary school, around that whole period, the whole school conforms to this idea of Santa being real, and you know, Rudolph the red-nosed reindeer. And you know, like when I was at primary school, I remember during assembly, they made us believe that Rudolph was outside, and they even went as far as to like play the bells in the background and say, "Yeah, Rudolph's outside."
Did you enjoy it though? Was it magical for you, or was it scary?
It was magical, but then when I found out the truth, like I was a critical thinker from a young age, so I'd go on and say, "But Mom, how does Santa get into our house? Because we don't have a chimney." But my mom used to say, I buy the presents, man. I mean, buy the presents then, you know what I mean? Yeah. But some of my friends would actually leave, their parents would leave milk and cookies out for Santa and things like that, like really go all out. But my point is, at school, within the curriculum, this thing is seriously endorsed nationwide. So even if you as a parent decide that you ain't going to tell your children about Santa, right? When they go to school, Santa's being spoke about, right? They're making Christmas cards and the teachers are telling them, yeah, Santa is real. So how do we deal with that? Is that okay?
That's actually an interesting point.
Leaving a carrot for the reindeer and a cookie outside. Cookie disappears. Parent ate the cookie last night. So I mean, that's what I'm saying. It's like all these like traditions and rituals, if you want to call it.
I think folktales have been a very important element to culture for a long time. I think that when we talk about folktale or fables, or you could say myths and legends if you want to, often though we do talk about them in an idea of the myths, legends, folktale, and folklore. And I think that that's a bit different to how we perpetuate it today as such. And because there are questions, personally, I think, in my opinion, from based on what I know about the season, I actually don't think there's any reason particularly to lie about it. Actually, I believe that we could talk about the real so-called Santas. We could talk about what they actually did at times, who they actually even were, and actually truly celebrate the people that did these good deeds and errands and support for the community during that period of time. Personally, I think that would be actually wonderful also. I'm not sure whether that idea at the moment fits in very well with everybody's ideology. Personally, I think that it could be made just as magical as the whole Santa narrative. Although I've got to say, the way that Coca-Cola pull off that Santa truck with the lights and stuff on there is next level. It's next level. And reindeer terminology, bearing in mind that, so again, the levels to this, levels, not everybody's aware that things like deer and stuff were very prevalent in Britain, for example, and many places around Europe, and other parts of the world too, with the North Americas and other parts in the world also. And similar animals, whether it be Africa and Asia also. And places that aren't necessarily in the tropical belt like as we are, in the cold weather belt, you could say. Deers are quite an important aspect of our culture around the cold times of year. Now, they're important for many reasons, actually, in the same very, very many reasons. And what that is maybe varies depending on community to community. Some would say deer was important because it was an important food source for us.
Okay.
Some would say deer was important because it was a workhorse. It did great tasks and deeds and helped us work some parts of the land. Others would say it was a great source of ivory, naturally, without killing the animal. that could be used to fashion toys
Mm-hmm.
and little trinkets and little objects. And so there are many elements to this culture regarding sort of the Rudolph thing and the reindeers and in cold weather countries and areas, which really aren't being celebrated as they used to be beforehand. I'm not sure really at the moment whether the Rudolph story does it actually justice or not, although it's very much fun. And it's very much fun. I can see how it can be fun. And also the red nose thing. I would really love to know where the red nose thing came in with the whole Rudolph thing. That would be a lovely, interesting concept, actually. For me, they can find that out with some research. That would be great. Maybe it's due to the whole sort of people have red noses sometimes during the cold weather. I'm not sure, but the whole Rudolph and red nose thing, I'm not too sure. That's very fun and interesting. The ears of themselves are very important aspects, especially this time of year when we may need additional support as humans from nature. Like I said, and that also varies a lot. Some people would revere them and would be, we must not consume or eat the deer. Other communities would be like, well, it's a good food source. We'll only have the ones that maybe fall naturally, or maybe some people would actually possibly even hunt them. And so I think there's a whole area of there's a whole chapter really you could learn about the original traditions and some of the wonderful things that were part of those traditions and the folklores possibly that is attributed to it that maybe were used to teach morality and also used to teach and showcase sort of preferred behaviors within that cultural community, within that ethnic group. One element about the bells, for example, people like, do you know about jingle bells?
Yep, I'm actually here now on the website. Actually, I was going to talk about that. You're in the spirit, bro. The history of the Jingle Bell song.
Yeah, okay.
I'm actually just reading it now.
Jingle Bell song, you mean, or Jingle Bell's the actual use of them?
Yeah.
What did you say? Sorry, Nathan.
The bells, the history behind, the song Jingle Bells, the one horse open sleigh.
Okay, we'll come into that part afterwards. The Jingle Bell song. I'm not sure exactly the name.
Yeah,
but,
right, cool.
The Jingle Bells were used in a similar way. So if you imagine there were huskies or sometimes deer pulling sleds in cold weather places at those times of year, and it was quite important in many occasions that other animals and other people didn't get run over. Didn't get run over. Mostly animals. And so in the same way that cats have bells, for example, you know how we use cats with bells. Bells were worn by often fast-moving sleds, and this would help essentially notify other animals and people that there was something coming through fast, and they wouldn't get the way, essentially. And of course, it became quite synonymous with certain points of the year, and also in some cases, like an ancient old school Royal Mail or delivery system, whereby delivery at that time of year, specifically when it was darker, much longer nights, you need another way of sort of, okay, this is the track and path. When you hear that jingle, like when you hear the bells from the tram bells, is it the trams? They have like that noise and that siren when the tram's coming along.
Yeah.
Well, that's essentially what the jingle bells were really part of, and of course they also became part of song and dance because people used to wear them during specific dances and celebrations also. Yeah. Go on. So you got some got a comment up there. Who wants to go and mention the comment? I know you're on.
Yeah, I'm just putting them up on the screen, but there are a few that I'd like to come back to because I just think some of these comments are really valuable this evening. So good evening, Christine. This is off the back of what we were saying earlier about in primary school. It is actually part of the curriculum. Like literally during December, they will come off like the mainstream curriculum to embed this notion of Christmas, and Christmas cards will be made, Christmas decorations, and teachers will tell the students that Santa is real. They will even pay for a Santa to come into school, and the children can sit on his lap and they'll receive a Christmas present and ho 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 and all of the above, right? So that's how much it is embedded in the curriculum. And I'm saying, is that okay? Like, did we say we wanted that as parents? Did we actually say we wanted that?
That I agree with that. I agree with the whole school thing. My initial response was, gosh, though, there are so many things in school that parents don't agree that already are part of the curriculum as well. So this could maybe a good way of sort of allowing parents to have more autonomy, more input to what their children are taught educationally and also culturally too. I think that some of the comments about sort of education and what you mentioned a minute ago, Ms. Rootz, was it does seem a bit like it could be. I'm not sure here, but it does seem like education bodies are very much in sync with capitalist drive, like drive runs, like in like maybe in revenue drives. So it's like I'm not sure if that's the case. And again, I think personally, we could teach about seasonal based traditions and even folklores and other things in a way which would be probably more holistic and also better for our literal survival. So we could obviously, because previously it was more about how do you best survive and thrive during the cold weather periods. That's really what most of these folklores and traditions were really about. Of course, in modern times, we've got central heating, like heated cars, thermal jackets. You know what I mean? Thermal hats and gloves on tap these days with all those like extra fibers and puffs that we have. It has maybe became more of a novelty. Not more, maybe it's kind of became more of a novelty than an essential now. And I think maybe over time, in order to keep it concurrent and maintain it, maybe not for all the best reasons, maybe quite possibly just for profit reasons, it has been warped and has sort of has been mutated quite a bit to many things that actually don't always represent the real core of that time of year. And I think the whole Scrooge, come back to the Scrooge concept, it kind of really is kind of like all about that, really, I'd say. So you're going to talk about the Jingle Bell song now, Nathan?
Oh, yeah. Basically, there's even on this website, actually, not I'll just quickly share my screen. I'll show you what I was looking at. But I already knew about this a while back, so everyone just can get a visual as well. This is one web. I've never seen this website in itself, but let me just get my share the screen real quick. Just give me one moment. Trying to find the actual part. Let's go to window. Is it in here? Let me go back. Yeah, that's what I'm going to share.
I got it.
So, can you guys read that? All right, cool. So there's one part that I'm looking at here, because obviously we talk about the bells, and funny enough, yeah, if you look at the picture, do you see any bells on that? But I know the dude do it. I've seen it, like as you said, Corey, for warning to let people know presents. Same with the cats. I'm actually glad the moments when I take my cats off their collars off my cat. Well, yeah, my cat's collars off. It's a problem in my house because they'll creep up like right under my feet without me realizing they're there. I'll be in the kitchen and then I'll turn around and then I'm kicking them or treading on them or something by accident. But when I can hear them, at least I know they're there. That's mad. So let's get to some antiquities behind the song. Oh, my bad. I've just lost the page. There we go.
Yeah, sorry. That's it. They're also horses.
Those are horses, yeah.
So, I mean, there's a couple of discrepancies a little bit in this kind of in this Jingle Bells article, I'd say. That's cool. I mean, it's got a sled, though. Yeah. It's got horses and night deers, and there's no Jingle Bells on it.
It does say a one-horse open sleigh. Obviously, there's two on this one. Now, basically, it says here, Jingle Bells is one of the most performed and well-known secular holiday songs ever written, not only in the United States, but around the world. It's the first song to have been broadcast from space by Gemini 6 astronauts 9 days before Christmas. Yeah, wow. In 1965. It's regularly been sung at the White House, most recently by President Barack Obama, and his family upon lighting the national Christmas tree in 2016. Now, check this. It says, but Jingle Bells isn't being sung anymore at Brighton's Council Rock Primary School. Jingle Bells, explained Council Rock principal Matt Tappan in an email, has been replaced with other songs that don't have the potential to be controversial or offensive. How? Let's find out. Tappan and other staff confirmed by email that the decision to remove the song was based in part on information In a 2017 article written by Professor Kaina Hamill, director of Boston University Core Curriculum, Hamill's article is a deep dive, nearly 12,000 words, including appendices and footnotes, into the origin of Jingle Bells, the life of its composer, James L. Pierpont, I didn't even know that was his name, and the popularity of sleigh songs in the mid-1800s. Now let's look at the dates, guys. We're getting deeper. She found documents showing that the first song, the song's first public performance may have occurred in 1857 at Boston Minstrel Show. Minstrelies was then, a then popular form of entertainment in which white actors performed in blackface. But when told that Council Rock had removed Jingle Bells based partly on her research, Hamill responded in an email, "I'm actually quite shocked the school would remove the song from the repertoire. I in no way recommend that it stop being sung by children." But let's carry on. "My article is to tell the story of the first performance of the song. I do not connect this to the popular Christmas tradition of the song. I'm singing the song now." I'm just getting to the part here. Let me just try and get to the part where it tells you basically slaves, that had chains on them, one on the plantations with bells on them. There's images if you go into Google, and they've got bells in there. So when they was trying to run away, it was easy for them to get chased, not with the not just the sleigh, but they even had dogs chasing after the bell as well.
Sorry, put it back, sir.
Yeah, so, slaves were
wearing. Are you referring that point from the article? Is that in the article there?
Not just the article. It's been read elsewhere, but this is from the original. I'm gonna. It does tell you here as well. I'm just trying to get to the nitty.
Okay, no worries. There
we go.
There.
Yeah, there we go. Look, the use of bells on enslaved. They're saying here that it may be true, but there's no connection to the song.
And is there any citation for that?
All right, watch this. Oh, it's here.
I mean, any citation
about this use of bells.
Let's get critical. I reckon. Is it critical? Because my interpretation of this tradition.
Hang on. Nathan, hold that a minute, Corey. Nathan, get to where you're getting, bro.
Go on then.
Nathan, did you finish?
Yeah, all right. So it says here, because on one part, this is the argument. Can you hear me?
Yeah,
I can hear you.
What's happened?
Yeah. Nothing. You can go.
All right, cool. So basically, so I'm just using this article anyway because I was trying to get to the nitty-gritty about one of the things about why the bells were being used as well, and that song. So obviously, people were offended because they researched and knew that and saw images. If you go into Google right now and just type in yokes of van with bells, and that's why they used to chase them on the horses. So when they was trying to run away, so runaway slaves, they put the bells on there so they couldn't run away. So you could hear them if they're running off in the forests and whatnot. So they used to chase them down on a one-horse open sleigh, and that's why and they made a song about it. That's why people became offended. So certain schools can't sing it because of that.
Okay, no worries. Is that in here? Is it? Is that in the article? Does it?
Yeah, look, yeah. The use of bells on enslaved peoples may be true, but there's no connection to the song. That's what they're saying. So it's an argument, isn't it? Someone's saying like, "Oh well,
okay,
that song doesn't mean that." But
that's like true, sir. I get that, but that's like saying that there are ropes on ships, there are ropes on people's tracksuit bottoms, and so like, I mean, don't get me wrong. What I would like to see is actual first-hand account documentation of this behavior, because my personal experience of, first of all, the blackface thing. Again, I want to quote out there that imitation is the greatest form of flattery. First of all, I want to cover that, and secondly, that actually, from my experience, in many cases, the blackface thing, I don't get me wrong, there were times when it kind of evolved a little bit, was actually, though, before it was used propagandized, was actually a honoring of previous people. So there are many ceremonies in many parts of the world where you may use blackface, for example, and from a very racialized perspective, especially, so I think sometimes it can be perceived that actually, it is a form of racism, and this may have been a tradition that was done by many peoples, even some people of color, a long time ago, before the idea of race existed, which is in the modern form it does today, for example. So I think there's a lot going on there. I'm going to hark back to the situation where in certain parts of Europe, they've tried to ban some great statues, for example, of say Saint Maurice in some cases. Are you familiar? I can put some context about this up, but have you seen this, Ms. Rootz or Nathan, where there are some activists that claim to be activists for anti-racism, but they're trying to get removed some really great saints, and the community there honor these people. They happen to be black people, but the community honor these people. The person's on a great statue. They're in great clothes, highly decorated, and happen to be swarthy. And so the question really is that, but because they say, oh, it's got certain features, they want to remove the statue, when the people through the interviews and for the research should actually know this is like Saint Maurice. He was a good person. They comment on some of the things that he did in history, and some of the area of the town is named after him, and he's celebrated. Now, if there were black people occupying that place in that land, then I don't think necessarily people would have such a big issue about them having a black person statue. And so my argument here is that because this is, I think, I'm not sure which part of it's in Europe, maybe Netherlands, but maybe not. Because somebody of color has gone in, saw a statue there, and thought, well, there a minute, why is there a black statue on the side there? He must be a slave. They've told this person, for example, and many people, he was never a slave. He was a saint. And so I think there's some element here, I think, of like this sort of victimhood and self-victimization a little bit, which may be getting in the way of us sometimes being aware that not every depiction of a person of color needs to be connected back to slavery. And it's important for us to do, because
no, you're right.
Exactly. What's that? Sorry. It's important for us to be, because that shouldn't be the first thing that comes into our mind when we think about the black iconography or black images. And if it is the first thing that comes to our mind as people of color, then that's a problem with us on the individual more so than even the depiction. And so I'm harking back to this idea that they've been trying to campaign to have the statue removed, even though the statue depicts somebody in very, very well dressed clothing, maybe with a shield or with a sword. And when you speak to the community, not me personally, although I've seen some comments in some forums and some interviews, the community says one of our great saints. They don't even mention his skin color. Not only that I've seen, but one of our great saints. He just happens to be a swarthy guy, whatever. And for some people, it's like, there's a black person there in that community, let's remove the statue. But then wouldn't that then remove the whole idea of people of color doing good deeds in that area of the world? There really is.
Well, there you go. I hear what you're saying.
So hear me out. One more thing. So quickly before start. So let's say, for example, there are children who want to go to fancy dress for their thingy. Are they allowed now to dress up as Saint Maurice? Now, I'm not saying that we can't be careful with the idea of propagandized mimicry. But let's say, for example, if a child wants to go as Saint Maurice or play that character in a play, or go as that as fancy dress, is that acceptable? And if it is, and if it's not, then why not? And if it isn't, how best should we do that? Because in the same way that a child who's inspired by somebody may want to emulate them, it's happening right now. And if we say that this child, because got pale skin, can't go to St. Maurice to this play, or play St. Maurice in that play, for example, then we may also be saying, oh, children couldn't maybe play Spider-Man a few years ago before the Black Spider-Man, or they can't maybe carry a Thor hammer, Mew Mew or Stormbreaker, for example, or they can't wear an Iron Man suit before Ironheart existed, and then so on and so on and so on. And actually, we're actually perpetuating a really toxic element of racialization to essentially characteristics which need not be directly attributed to someone's skin color. I.e., good deeds in themselves don't have a race. Morality doesn't have a race. And I think in areas like this, for example, where the whole blackface thing, yeah, don't be wrong, I am not lying. I know of, like, is it Lincoln? There's some really propaganda stuff about Lincoln, for example, in the US and other things where blackface has been used in a very derogative manner. I definitely am aware of that. I'm not denying that at all. Whether that be like the watermelon thing and other things. At the same time, prior to that, there's also been elements where it's also been celebrated. And from my experience, this element here of blackface in many cultures, actually, there was like it's not always a derogative thing. Actually, in some cases, for example, so if we acknowledge these, like Saint Nicholas had swarthy skin, yeah, and maybe some areas that he went to and travelled around, then can we acknowledge that maybe some of his helpers also had swarthy skin? And then if we sort of think about that narrative as well, bear in mind there are many, obviously many saints. I'll talk about that later on. And if children want to maybe get dressed up for that area at the top of the year, maybe mimic those characters and do their own little plays, would it be okay then for them to adorn similar dress, or maybe even possibly blackface? In fact, in some cases, I want to note this, in some cases, there was a good look to black in your face. Did you know that?
No.
So in some cases, it was like a good look ritual.
Well, it's like tanning.
Sorry?
Like spray tan.
Well, I don't get the whole spray tan thing.
It's like spray tan.
Okay, I'm not sure about spray tan, but okay. I'm not sure about basically the ritual of essentially.
Fast forward.
In some cases, I know that babies. I've got some composure in a sec. Babies were given to somebody, and they would mark their face or cover their face or paint their face black. In other cases, people will maybe do that in other items, or maybe wear black clothing. And it wasn't what we think it is today. So again, another little example is that before Queen Victoria, the color black was not associated with death and morbidity, for example. Did you know that? Did you know that funeral dress was not black prior in most places before Queen Victoria? Did you know that?
No, didn't know that.
Oh, okay, yeah. So the whole idea of her wearing a black dress in the morning, that culture was brought about by her own specific situation.
Right. Understood. Wow.
Before that, I'm going to go to pop culture here. Wakanda T'Challa funeral service. They're wearing all white.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, and so if you can look at that and look at many other cultures around Africa and around the Caribbean Islands, for example, black was not worn for funerals. Okay, and so it was not associated with necessarily with death or those kind of things necessarily. And in fact, in this case, for example, around solstice, it was associated with good luck in many traditions. And so I think it's really important that we can sort of identify, okay, the incidences which are derogative and the ones which are not. Because if we put them all into one bracket and we assume that, oh, there a minute, there's a blackface in a non-black community, it's got to be a bad thing, or a black statue in a non-black community, he must have been a slave. Then we're reinforcing a colonial mindset that's not really even part of the true narrative.
Mm.
And so I think that regarding sort of the bowels thing, the idea that we were going to associate the bowels thing, for example, with slavery, personally, I was quite shocked. You could put in cow bowels, for example. Like, I mean, like, I'm joking, but like, I was quite shocked. Now we know the actual use of them, and I would say from tradition, and again, servants may be used at times. But I thought if we look at how servants and stuff were and are from the whole sort of Black Wall Street situation that we mentioned before, all these people were skilled labor. And so this idea that all servants or slaves were heavily brutalized is non-profitable. We need to establish that first of all. So if you've got somebody that you're going to be using to work for you, if you batter them and beat them up, who's doing the work then? And so I think that we need to sort of really try and step as much as we can out of the sort of victim mentality and into the thriving mentality and think critically about all these things. But what you got something here for us, Nathan? What are you going to show then? What was that?
Yeah. Just before we move on to the next part of the conversation, just want to kind of like conclude there what you were saying about the Jingle Bell song, right? So I think you made some really valuable points there, Corey, about slavery and us having this victimized approach to slavery, and also to look at slavery from different perspectives, because actually, as you said, slaves were skilled people and they were selected because of their abilities and they were investments, right?
Yeah.
But at the same time, you cannot kind of park to one side that there was a school that has banned the song Jingle Bells because somebody has carried out some research and has suggested that it may link to, right? So all of it's critical thinking,
Yeah,
all of it, all of it's information, right? All of it needs to be embraced and you to allow yourself to come up with your own perspective, so to speak. So I just found that all really interesting. Like, hopefully it will now inspire other people who watch us to go and do their own research, because that's what this is about, isn't it? Getting people to think critically. And we've just planted seeds. Nathan's shown us this, so go and do your own research. Corey's saying this, so now go and do your own research. Yeah,
exactly.
So
and when you get the research, send it in to us. Let us know. Comment in the
share
in the comments. Yeah, share in the comments.
Because without research, there's no growth. There's no sense of identity. Research is critical for you to reach this ideal of self-actualization, right? Knowledge is power. So, and we have information at our fingertips. Like, this is what we constantly kind of practice on this platform, isn't it? How we research kind of live. Yeah, we'll share the screen when we're Googling, and we'll share with you our reference sources and things, because it's key. Like, how do you know if you don't look? How do you know if you don't talk? Right? How do you know? You're allowed to talk. You're allowed to, if it's wrong, be around people who can put you right, or who can at least show you in an alternative perspective. So I just thought I wanted to say that, because all of it's valuable, what's been said, and the challenges are also really necessary to establish wisdom, ultimately. So I just wanted to say that before you move on to what you want to say next, Nathan.
Yeah, excellent. No, that's an excellent point. It's true, because that article that I read just now, I only found out that it got banned in a school. I already knew about the concept of it, about it. That's why I went to research. I was trying to find something else, but then I came across that. And I thought, hang on, it actually got banned in the school. So as you said, someone else, obviously multiple people have gone out and done their research and brought it to light to think, hang on, this is going to the same, not knowing the antiquity of what we actually celebrate and what we sing songs about and this, that, and the third. We don't really understand. So again, like as you said, when about Christmas now, people say it's a Christian thing. It's a Christian thing. So obviously what's associated with Christianity? The Bible. What does the Bible tell you itself about Christmas? What were they doing before Christmas even existed, which was written in the book? Because they say, celebrating the birth of Jesus. Now, one thing I can say, once he was born, imagine he was living, 30-something years before he was sacrificed. Was there any point after he was born anyone celebrating Christmas written? Was it ever written that his birthday was celebrated on the 25th after that? I can tell you one thing that they were doing around that time, which is written. I'll actually get that first. I'm going to share my screen again. Right. I'll share it again. Boom.
Whilst you're getting that organized, Mr. Uganda, welcome. Yeah, I want to emphasize that if you would like to join us here within the studio, there is a link within the chat. Select the chat and join the conversation. Yeah, we encourage that. Discussion is key. I also want to say good evening to Chrissy, who's making some valid points in the comment area. I like to always keep referring to the comment areas because it's part of the discussion, right? And later on, we'll tackle some of the comments, if that's okay, Corey and Nathan, because I'd like to chime in on some of them. So if I don't show them straight away, we will come back to them and definitely discuss them. Nathan, I have your... Sorry, Corey.
So before you go into that, I think this is going to be quite interesting going into this next section also.
Yes.
I think it's... So we've gone to... we've gone on to the sort of the whole Santa situation. But now we're going on to the Jesus situation, are we?
Well, I think we do need to
Price
come back
break.
to the Santa. We do need to come back to the Santa situation. So we'll let Nathan talk about Christmas and Christianity. I think that's vital. But I know that we have got some research around Santa, and also I want to touch on Christmas from the natural perspective. So what's going on in the cosmos?
Yeah,
etc.
that would be really great too. Also, I think that
Yeah.
probably ties in a lot to what he's going to be talking about now, possibly.
Yes.
So okay, take the
Yeah.
floor.
Here we go.
Okay, guys, excellent. Thank you. All right, so right now, on my end on the page as well. So here I'm going to start with the book of Daniel, chapter 7 and verse 25, because here's the other thing, because the two, I'm going to try and do this twofold as well, the two parts, because it's Christmas and New Year we're talking about. So I'm going to start here, and it says, and he shall speak great words against the Most High. And basically, it's the heathen going against what the Most High do. Like anyone that's against the Most High, the world that we're living in now, basically, the pagan world, or if anything, call the Gentiles world, the heathen world, whichever. But I'm going to read it from the top. And he shall speak great words against the Most High, and shall wear out the saints of the Most High, and think to change times and laws, and they shall be given into his hand until the times and the dividing of time. I'm reading from the King James 16:11, by the way. That's why the U is a V. That's why they call it W rather than V. So it says given, for example. So if it looks weird what you're reading, the V is a U and whatnot. So that's it. So this part's explaining that, yeah, the times have changed, because at one point in Scotland until the 1600s, the New Year used to be in March, in springtime. So what changed it to winter? So obviously this is a prophecy to say that the times were going to change, where the Gregorian challenge and calendar was introduced. At one point, when you look at the old ancient calendars, it was 13 months, and everything was divided well, like with the whole lunar cycle and this and that and the third. And one thing that I came across the other day, which is really cool, I did not know the significance of a turtle shell. It's got 13 segments on there which represent the months, and on the very end of its thing, it's got 28 like outer shell on the edges, like the trimming, you know, like that very edge of a turtle shell.
Yeah, I know.
28. Yeah,
it's a very important aspect of like Amerindian culture, actually, and possibly other cultures around the world.
Yes, and yeah, many cultures. Yeah.
And North America was called Turtle Island. That's like a very famous statement for Turtle Island, North Americas. But yes, I'm very familiar with the aspect of calendar and how the synchronicity between sort of turtle shells may have been used and well known about regarding calendar building. I think the changes of calendars is a very interesting statement in itself. I think changes of calendars is very interesting, and how we sort of map out what's happening, because there is a difference. So there's a difference between what nature says is day and night, you could say possibly, and time of year, and the start of the new seasons, and when we are currently, and what we perceive to be currently the maybe start of the new year. And so the celestial new year, for example, or the actual new year by nature's calendar, by most logical perspective, would be the very start of spring before summer, of course at the end of winter, you would say. Of course, different cultures may have been mapping out differently. And of course, so that would hark to the whole sort of March time period, when on a natural celestial perspective, when the plants and the animals come out of hibernation, and then the life on Earth sort of starts to revamp, re-energize, and become more active. Yeah, many would say that being the natural New Year start point. So I think that's quite an interesting statement you made there, Nathan.
There you go. Thank you for that, bro. But yeah, so again, around this time, yeah, because they say that Jesus was born around they say 25th, the birth of Jesus. But obviously now, when people are starting to wake up more, they're starting to say it was this month and this and that and the third. But there's a lot of clues as well. This is where research comes into, clues to know when he was born or around that particular time and what happened. There were certain dates, certain events that's happened. So let's speak about winter now. This is one thing that happened in winter around this time of year. And it was, this is the book of John, chapter 10 and verse 22. And it says, and it was at Jerusalem the Feast of Dedication, and it was winter. So you know what season it was. But how do we know if winter was a different month and what month is this and that and the third? What is the Feast of Dedication? Because if you ask a person in Christianity, a lot of them don't know where it came from, because the Feast of Dedication, because in the Bible that most people read, has 66 books. But the actual antiquity of the Feast of Dedication, you won't read it anywhere else but in the first book of Maccabees, in the Apocrypha, which was removed by the Catholics in the 1800s. And on the website that I'm on actually right now tells you what happens with the Apocrypha. And so if I was to go now into the book of Maccabees, it tells you what happened in during the Feast of Dedication. And they call it Hanukkah, while the Jews, the Jewish people, they made a big mistake because their symbol has 9 candles. But the actual, if you to study what the candles represent in the Bible, there's supposed to only be 7, which represents the 7 churches. And even prior to that, when you read in the book of Exodus, there's 7 candles altogether, which is going to bring you a very similar thing here. There's a relation between that and Kwanzaa, because when you look at Kwanzaa, they've got 7 candles as well. So why is that? Why is that significant? Do you understand? But let's find out what dedication meant. It was basically the rebuilding of an altar which got destroyed. Well, the temple, it got destroyed by I think it was King Antiochus. It was one of the this was after Alexander the Great, one of his descendants. I think it was Antiochus, and yes, I think it was Antiochus and Tryphon and those people. They destroyed the temple, then they rebuilt it, and then they celebrated in, I'll tell you what date it was. It was the month of Caslu, which means, if you can Google it, it means the 9th month. So I'm going to give you, I'm going to go to First Maccabees.
Is this the 9th month from March, or is it 9th month from January though?
No, 9th month from the actual the month of Bib, which is in spring.
Okay, so that would be December time then in our calendar.
Yes, it'd be December. Yeah, because that's why I went to John first. It was winter. So yeah, so the 9th month from the spring, yeah, it'd be around December. But I'm going to show you some serious stuff, which is really cool, and to know how the error in the calendars as well today. And I've got something that's very irrefutable, but I don't think I'll be able to bring it up in this session. So First Book of Maccabees, chapter 4 and verse 59. All the way down here.
One sec, guys.
Cool. I might have a bit of latency on my end as well. But yeah, this is the First Book of Maccabees, chapter 4 and verse 59. So if anyone wants to know where to find the feast dedication, you'd only find it here, and also written in the New Testament. And that's where obviously Jesus, he celebrated it because he went there. He actually celebrated the feast. When you read the verse after in John chapter 10 and verse 23. Yeah. So this is the First Book of Maccabees, chapter 1 and verse 59. And it says, moreover, Judas and his brethren with the whole congregation of Israel. This is not Judas, the one that that's in the New Testament. Is another Judas, this person. Okay. So it says, moreover, Judas and his brethren. Yeah. Moreover, Judas and his brethren with the whole congregation of Israel ordained that the days of dedication of the altar should be kept in their season from year to year by the space of 8 days from the 5th and 20th day of the month Caslu with mirth and gladness. Bear that in mind, the 5th and 20th day, the 25th day, okay? So we know where we're going, all right? So this is why people say Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, because it was around the same time. But let's find out something else that what happened in in Maccabees. So I'm going to stay in the same chapter, and I'm going to go. No, actually, chapter 1. So I'm going to go back. Chapter 1. So let me just go back up here. This is what they were doing, back then. The heathen were doing on the same day, which is sad stories, because they were getting, obviously, the Israelites here to go after their customs and follow after the customs of the heathen. So let's go back here. So chapter 1 and verse 54. Some heavy stuff. stuff, you know, like when you find out these, why did they remove certain things from the Bible? Because they don't want you to know. We want to blindly celebrate certain things. However, there's still things in there which tell you what to do, like around these, like, you know, about the whole Christmas and idolatry and that. But, you know, you'll go to churches and they've got Christmas trees in there where there's a scripture that tells you not to set one up, you know. So anyways, let's go back here. So this is the first book of Maccabees, chapter 1 and verse 54. I'm going to read down a bit as well. Now, the 15th day of the month Caslu, in the 140 and 5th year. So it's even telling the timeline as well. This is obviously BC. They set up the abomination of desolation upon the altar and builded idol altars throughout the cities of Judah on every side. So this is when they took over. This is before them. They rebuilt the temple. So this is the heathens doing this around this time now. And it says, and burnt incense at the door of their houses and in the street. So this is idol worship that they were doing. And when they had rent in pieces the books of the law, so they got the hold of the Bible and they destroyed it. And how many times has that happened in history? They tried to destroy the Bible. There's always, out of all religious books, why the Bible and nothing else? Why it's the most criticized book on the face of the earth?
Okay, well, we've got questions afterwards. That's cool.
All right, cool. Thank you. And wheresoever was found with any the book of the testament, or if any who consented to the law, the king's commandment was that they should put him to death. So anyone that was keeping the laws of the Bible were put to death. They weren't allowed to do it. You know, thus did they by their authority unto the Israelites every month to as many as were found in cities. Now, watch this. Now, the 5th and 20th day of the month, they did sacrifice upon the idol altar, which was upon the altar of God. So imagine they took over the temple and started to burn and do idol worship in churches, basically, in the actual temples, the proper, you know, and when the enemy took over the Israelites, at which time, according to the commandment, they put to death certain women that had caused their children to be circumcised, and hanged the infants about their necks and rifled their houses and slew them that had circumcised them. So they even hung their children. Now, that's another thing, the whole, you know, the baubles on the Christmas tree.
Who's writing this, by the way? Who's writing this part? What chapter is this?
Oh, this is the first book of Maccabees.
Okay.
Yeah, chapter 1. So it's talking about what they were doing. On the same day, on the 25th, they were sacrificing unto idols. Do you know what I mean? So, anywho.
So you were talking about the baubles. You were about to say something about the baubles.
Basically, it's apparently, and I'm emphasizing the word apparently, it represents the baubles represents hanging infants on a tree, which people got hung on trees in history. You know, I'm just saying, you know, so I can understand why it's linked and why it's been spoken of. So let's go to what the Bible says about the Christmas tree in itself.
I was about to say there's a whole theory around the Christmas tree, isn't there? So I'm glad you're going there.
I mean, that's a question. Yeah, I think that'd be good. Go on. I mean, this might be interesting, I think, as well.
Jeremiah 10 and 1. The good thing about cultural what's it called now? Cultural context. There were certain things which written in the Bible, but you know, like for example, Ezekiel, when he's trying to describe these things that are flying in the sky, which are known as UFOs, but because he didn't know how to describe it, he'd say it looks like eyes, it looks like this, there's a fire like this and that. You know, there's like even missiles are written in the Bible, but they call them screaming arrows. Arrows don't make sound, but missiles do. Do you know what I mean? So it's like we didn't know how to do, you know, the best we could do is be descriptive. So the same with the whole Christmas tree. It doesn't actually say don't put up a Christmas tree, because there was no Christmas. It never existed back then. So this is what it says in the book of Jeremiah, chapter 10 and verse 1. It says, hear ye the word which the Lord speaketh unto you, O house of Israel. Thus saith the Lord, learn not the way of the heathen, and be not dismayed at the signs of heaven, for the heathen are dismayed at them. I'm going to touch on that, because what happened, they started to worship and you know, like obviously horoscopes and astrology and all that, yeah? We can understand what the stars are there for, and, you know, understanding seasons, the cosmos, this and that, and what happens, right? But people started to worship them as if they were gods.
Right.
Like giving the planets names like Saturn. You know who Saturnalia is, and all that. We know all these Roman. They idolatrized them. That's the problem. That's what the heathen were doing. They called them gods. It says for the customs of the people are vain. Now listen to this descriptive writing. It says, for one cutteth a tree out of a forest, the work of the hands of a workman with the axe. They deck it with silver and gold. They fasten it with nails and with hammers that it move not. So they chop down the tree. Deck means to decorate, like deck the halls with boughs of holly, and all that. Yeah. So deck means to decorate. So when do you decorate? Cut down a tree and decorate with silver and gold at Christmas. They fasten it with nails and with hammers that it moves up. So you put it on like in a pot or whatnot. It says they are upright as the palm tree, but speak not. They must needs be born because they cannot go. Be not afraid of them. There's a story about that because, like if you don't putting presents underneath a tree was basically giving gifts to the idol, which was a tree. Idol worship is like a tree, like even goes back from Genesis. It says here, like worshiping a tree was the beginning of spiritual fornication. Meaning, fornicating against God means you're actually going to serve other idols other than the Most High Himself. Do you know what I mean? The one that creates you. So it's letting you know that this tree is nothing. You've chopped it down. You put nails in it. The thing can't move. It can't attack you. But they've been put fear in. Fear was instilled, saying that this thing now that you've created, you're now bowing down to it. Because when you put your presents down, the whole ritual is what do? You bow or you go onto your knees here to put the presents under the tree. It's a ritual. It's a performing act. So no, you're not going to throw your presents underneath the tree, aren't you? You're going to place them down delicately. You don't want to break it. So what do? You have to place it down by bowing or crouching, and that's what it was. So there it goes. It just says, go on.
Finish first. I'm eager. Cool. Go.
So so it's telling you this is why like Jehovah's Witness, for example, they don't celebrate it. A lot of certain churches don't celebrate it, but some do. So you got to imagine they're reading out the same book, but they're not studying, and they say, "Oh, we're celebrating the birth of Jesus." Now let's get something. Now let's talk about the story of the birth of Jesus. Now, if it was winter around the 25th, where we just established they were doing the Feast of Dedication. We established in John 10, chapter 10, verse 22, that around that time, in the month, in winter, it was dedication. Around the same time, people celebrate Christmas and they say that it's Jesus' birthday. Now, let's look at the whole nativity scenario. Mary and Joseph could not find a place to stay because all the inns were full. Why would they be full around this time? No one mentioned anything about the Feast of Dedication in the story, the nativity play. And there's a big significance about shepherds watching flock over by night, the shepherds. Now, what season is it very glorified for shepherds to be around sheep? Let's find out. Let's go to the book of Luke. Luke chapter 1 and verse... No, actually it's 2, I think it is. Luke 2 and 42. 2 and 42, my bad. Let's get that. There we go. So we're talking, this is, let's read from verse 40. It says, and the child grew and waxed strong in spirit, filled with wisdom, and the grace of God was upon him. Now his parents went to Jerusalem every year at the feast of Passover. And when he was 12 years old, they went up to Jerusalem after the custom of the feast. Right, so he went up to there, like, so basically around the time when they go to Jerusalem, it was always the Passover. Around the time he was, so like every year they'd go there, every year religiously. Everyone used to go to Jerusalem to meet there. It was the Holy Land. So what you would expect, you'd expect inns and hotels or whatever to be full. They're gonna be fully booked the same way, like in most festive seasons, it's booked. Like in this modern day world, if you want to go and book a hotel around Christmas, like Parliament Square, they're going to be booked because everyone's going to want to do New Year's at least as well. They want to celebrate New Year's down there, so most of the place can be full. But obviously, in this tradition here, biblically, the places would be full during the Passover. That's why they couldn't find a place to stay. Again, with the shepherds watching over the flock, right? There was lots of them, loads of shepherds. The one thing is because during the Passover, what did they do? They'd sacrifice the lamb. And what happened? What was the antiquity of the Passover? It's when the Jews exiled from the Egyptian captivity at the time, the Exodus period. And when was that? So let's find out, just to get that right. When the Passover was actually celebrated, which time of the year? Because obviously we know Passover is usually around Easter, but no one observes Passover, but they observe Easter eggs and worshiping the idol called Ishtar, you know, or Astaroth, if you want to call it. Astaroth is another name of the god. But yeah, let's go to Deuteronomy 16 and verse 1, and then I'll stop there if anything. Yeah, 16 and verse 1. Deuteronomy. Come on. Okay. It says, observe the month of Abib and keep the Passover unto the Lord thy God. For in the month of Abib, the Lord thy God brought thee forth out of Egypt by night. So that's why Passover it's supposed to be observed and celebrated, from coming out of captivity, out of the slavery from the Egyptians then at that time. And that was the reason why we had the Passover lamb. So you got to think about, we know when the Passover is, it's in spring, right? And that's funny as well when you look at the pictures of the nativity. So imagine in Jerusalem, in Bethlehem. I remember growing up, I used to see pictures of snow in Bethlehem. When has it ever snowed in Bethlehem? Even in the winter? Do you know what I mean? In Jerusalem, that place, it's in the equator. It doesn't see snow. Snow doesn't happen there unless there's a whole shift in the whole system. You know what I mean? So actually, there's one more thing just to show what a month is as well. How we observe the month, and using the signs of heaven to show us what the moon represents. Because we was talking, I think it's the other day, we was talking about the new moon being full. So biblically, let's find out as well. So the month was there for us to observe. Where the month was there for a sign to not. The moon was there to observe the month. So let's find out real quick. Right, I'm gonna show you something in the Strong's Concordance. So we're gonna go into some etymology on this, and then I'll be done there. If anything. All right. So let's go to the Book of Psalms. Sorry, my bad. Psalms. I think it's 83 and 1. I think, did I write it down here? 81 and 3. All right. And every month, because basically to observe the new moon, you'd blow up the trumpet. That's why one of the reasons for the shofar that I've got behind me, right? It was not just for the month, yeah. It's also for warning as well, like if there's any impending danger or for time. But it tell you, like, basically that people are appointed to blow up the trumpet in the new moon to let everyone know, like the whole town, village, the world, and whatnot. Oh yeah, it's the new month. It's one of those basically. So the shofar did have a significance. And that came all the way from Israel as well. But yeah, it says here, 81 and verse 3. There we go. It says, blow up the trumpet in the new moon in the time appointed on our solemn feast day. So every month you'd be like, Happy New Moon. But no one does that, even though if you're inclined to the Bible and people are supposed to follow what the Bible says, as they say, how come they're not doing these traditions and these celebrations, these ceremonial laws which are there, but they're doing things which are external and the Bible tells you not to do? Don't celebrate this, but they're doing it, but they've got the Bible in their hand at the same time while celebrating something which the Bible tells you not to do. So yeah, your left and right hand here are now in conflict. Your mind, like, this is a whole lying thing. We've learned when you grow up, this ain't true, but we still have the audacity, if anything, to teach our children knowing that's a lie. And it's going back to what you were saying, Corey, as well. That trust barrier between you and your parents is not there. That connection's gone. It's like, hang on, all these years you've lied to me, but then we go and carry on the legacy of lies. Imagine how you felt as a child when you realized this isn't real. And how you imagine you've got that feeling, you've adopted that feeling, how let down you feel. But now you're thinking, I don't want to feel like that. I wouldn't want anyone to feel like they've been lied to. But then you go and do the same to your children. That's a mental illness to do that, if you think about it. But anyways,
okay, that's deep. Okay, that's deep, man.
But let's go here. Blow up the trumpet in the new moon in the time appointed. So let's get some the concordance on the word appointed and moon, because moon means month. You can just type in what does moon mean. It means month. But let's find out what the new moon is, because most people see the new moon as a dark moon, like you can't see it in the sky. It's gone completely. But a full moon you can see, right? You can see a waxing gibbous, waning gibbous, and whatnot, right? You can see all that in a crescent moon. You can't see a new moon. But let's find out what it means. So basically, this is the Blue Letter Bible, or we can use the Lexicon Concordance. So if you want to know the antiquity or the Strong's Concordance, you can go to this. It's the blueletterbible.org. But I've got here already Psalms 81 and verse 3. But I've highlighted the word appointed, in the time appointed. Now the Strong's is H3677. So I'm going to click this. This is how you find out the antiquity of words. Anyone? So this is for all the viewers as well. So if I click on this now, H367 got obviously the Hebrew word is keseh, right? Root word etymology. So apparently from here, that's the actual root word. But watch this now. What does that say, guys?
Full moon.
Yeah. So blow up the trumpet in the new moon, in the time appointed, the full moon. But we've been taught, everyone's happy, it's the new moon, but the full moon apparently is the new moon. You can even right now Google, the movie Twilight, new moon.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Right. On the front cover of the DVD or the actual cover, if it's the actual new moon, why is it a full moon?
Yeah, facts.
So it's right there in our faces. The truth's there. Well, if anything, the truth, if we want to call it truth, is right there in front of you. But we are accustomed to lies, blatant lies. Even as I said, the whole Santa thing. When people learn that this depicted Santa is not real, but then we still teach it. This ain't real, because a lot of people we lie to please the moment.
Yeah.
When like simple lies like oh, do I look big in this? No, you look fine.
Yeah.
Just to keep the person, keep
there.
You know what I mean? But yeah, and on another time, but I would like to say it's the same thing. This reason why I can see that the new moon is full, right, and how it works is because if you read the all right, one last, sorry guys, then I'm done.
Yeah, you're good, bro. You're good. Thanks.
All right, here's one more. First Kings, there's something else. This is what happened in idolatry now. This is something that I don't know what made me research on this, because I was very critical. When someone told me, when I first was told, oh, do you know that the new moon being full? And I'm like, oh, let me go and do my research. It tells you in the book of Proverbs, it says the simple believe of every word, but the prudent will look about his goings, meaning go and research, do your research, be critical about it. That's why it also says to study to show thyself approved. So I'm only going to go on references here, but I found something which is flawless. Right, now watch this. 1 Kings chapter 12 and verse 27. So 1 Kings. This is mad, guys. It blew my head off when I found this out. 1 Kings, and I will play a little game on it as well. Where is 1 Kings? So it's up here. There it is. So my eyes went funny for a second. When you stare at the screen and you get that little blur. You might need to wear glasses.
You need some blue blockers.
Yeah, even that. Do you remember they used to have the mesh thing that I used to say? Yeah, there's like a mesh thing as well that you can get to dim the screen. Yeah. All right. Basically, this is something that the heathen celebrated at one point. Well, actually, no, this was the Israelites in the wilderness at one point. No, sorry. This part was where the northern and southern kingdom had split. So you had King Jeroboam and Rehoboam. Rehoboam went into idolatry, and all the people from the northern tribes started to do that afterwards as well. This is what they started to do, like a lot of idol worship. But these are things that happened even when the Israelites came out of Egypt. You know, that the golden calf situation.
Yeah.
And I want to. Here's the key thing now. Read. Yeah, this is 32. Read. I'm going to read down to verse 32. I'm going to start from 27. It says, if these people go up to do sacrifice in the house of the Lord at Jerusalem, then shall the heart of this people turn again unto their Lord, even unto Rehoboam, king of Judah, and they shall kill me and go again to Rehoboam, king of Judah. Whereupon the king took counsel and made 2 calves of gold and said unto them, is it too much for you to go up to Jerusalem? Behold thy gods, O Israel, which brought thee up out of the land of Egypt. And he set one in Bethel and the other in Dan. So he set up 2 golden calves. So they started to worship him in different locations. And this thing became a sin, for the people went to worship before the one even unto Dan. So this is why the tribe of Dan, they got abolished basically. The Most High destroyed that tribe. That's why there was 13 tribes at one point. Now there's only 12 tribes. So yeah. And he made an house, read verse 31. And he made an house of high places and made priests of the lowest of the people, which were not the sons of Levi, because it was the Levitical priests, which are the ones that were supposed to ordain the ceremonial laws. That's what the tribe of Levi was about. So verse 32, Jeroboam ordained a feast in the 8th month on the 15th day of the month. So you've got to remember the month of Abib is around March, April, but you have to use the moon. The moon is the key thing that we're getting at now. This is why all these calendars messed up, right? The new moon is key, being full, right? So on the 8th month, on the 15th day of the month, like unto the feast that is in Judah, and he offered upon the altar, so he did in Bethel, sacrificing unto the calves that he had made, and he placed in Bethel the priests of high places which he'd made. So on the 15th day of the 8th month, that's the key thing I want you to remember, right? And I want to play a small game on this one now to see if I've still got it, if this is right. I'm going to remember the 15th day of the 8th month. Now, my question to you guys is this. Who, in which religion today, do they worship the cow?
Hinduism.
Yeah.
And what is the key celebration that they celebrate every year that everyone knows about?
Diwali.
There you go. Thank you. Now, I thought at one point, I was like, oh, that they're talking about, and I thought, they're talking about Diwali here. And I was told I was wrong until I was doing my calculations, every month, every year. Now, putting into perspective that the new moon being full, this is the game that I'm going to play. So I'm going to drop my screen.
Yeah.
All right.
Do you want me to bring it down?
I'm going to unshare my screen now. Okay. I need a favor from you, Corey.
What is it?
All right. So get Google up on your share your screen and get Google up. Yeah, just get Google.
Oh,
right. Let's play a game.
Can you do this? I'm going to do that right now. You can do this, bro. Are you finished?
Do you want me to do it? Do you want me to do it?
Oh yeah. All right, Miss Rootz. Yeah, sorry.
I'm currently working on something, you see, so I got to go on a show as well. So I'm currently working on something.
Okay.
Have you finished now? You yet?
No, it's not finished yet.
Yeah, I'm gonna. Just
not finished yet.
A minute now.
So I'm gonna share Google. Yeah.
Okay. Right now, I've got a moon calendar on my phone in it.
Okay.
Right. So what I'm gonna do. So remember what I said about Diwali, right? Yeah. And that scripture there in Kings. So imagine how old that scripture is, and Diwali, which is known as the Festival of Lights. Now, using the new moon calendar, I'm not using Google. I'm just going to use this, and I'm going to show you. So Diwali this year was, I'll tell you now. Diwali was around. Hang on. think if I'm correct, was Diwali. If it was not the 13th of November this year, it would be. It wouldn't have been the 15th of October. Hang on. 14th of October. So Google Diwali 2023.
Okay. Diwali. How do you spell Diwali again?
DIW.
That's it.
ALI.
Got it. 2023.
There you go. And now, and watch this. Watch this now. On the new moon calendar, I'm not sure if you can see it. Right. Sorry, the moon calendar. It's the same time. The moon's never in the sky during Diwali. It's the obviously as they everyone calls the new moon when it's dark. Now let's play a game. Now before you type this in, I'm going to tell you. According to this, when Diwali is next year in 2024. Watch this. This is how I know if the new moon's full, and that celebration that was in what I read in the Book of Kings is Diwali, but back then before it was called Diwali, so they've been worshipping the cow since then and celebrating this celebration. So let me get early in 2024. I think it's around the first of Friday, the 1st of November. So type.
Diwali
If you notice, there's always fireworks going off around this time because it's near bonfire, always near bonfire night.
Right. So
yeah, I've got the 1st of November here, and this is
yes, it is.
Do you see that?
Yeah. There it is.
Smash. It's flawless. I can get 2025. I can tell you according to that. And that's based on the moon being full. That's how you calculate your months. Right. I said that the 15th day, the 8th month. So next year, if I did 2025, this is what you'll get.
Let's do 2025 one more time.
So this is 2025 now. October. All right, yeah, just to bring it home.
There we go. Monday, October the 20th.
Oh, this is a tough one. Is it the 21st? 20th of October, 21st.
It says, yeah, Diwali in 2025 is on Monday, October the 20th. I'm not sure. Can you see the screen? Can you I've shared Google. Can you see it?
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah, I can see it now. Yeah.
Yeah. It's there.
Yeah, I can see it now. Yeah. Couldn't see it a second, but yeah, I've got the same here.
Amazing. That's good research, bro. Well done.
There you go. So that's what I'm saying, because the moon's never in the sky. On during Diwali, that's why the fireworks go off and they call it the Festival of Light. So imagine I've read something that was celebrated way back then. Fast forward to 2025, it's the same celebration, which was a sin, and the only religion that worships the cow is Hinduism. So that's just putting 2 and 2 together, and that was some research. And then when I bought that home, people are like, wow, but it's always been there. We just don't research. What's the history behind it, or where would you find it? So imagine that idolatrous celebration in another religion is written here in this book before Hinduism even existed. Do you know what I mean? So people don't know where the history of what we celebrate. But yeah, that's it on my end.
Well, before you go off there, Nathan, there's a few questions here that or comments that came up whilst you were doing your little presentation. So the first thing, if you can, I'd like you to answer this. I'll put it up. The question was, why didn't King James authorize the inclusion of Maccabees in the King James version?
Excellent question. I have the King James 1611 with the Book of Maccabees in here. It's been there. It got removed by the Catholics in the 1800s. He did all of it because the Book of Maccabees was mostly written in Latin. So we had Hebrew, Greek, and Latin translators during the time from 1604 to 1611. In 1605, the Catholics didn't want that to happen. That's where the history behind the gunpowder plot was, when they tried to blow up Parliament, because King James was in there authorizing it between from 1604 to 1611. In 1605, Guy Fawkes wants to go and blow up. Yeah, in 1605, Guy Fawkes tried to go and blow it up when King James was there. But just to answer your question, Uganda, it has been in there all the time. I've got 80 books in this.
Yeah.
You can go you can download the Apocrypha and all that, and you can pick the King James.
Yeah. Corey, did you want to say something off the back of that before I go to the next comment?
Yeah, I've got a few things to say. Will I get time to say before the end of the show, do you think?
Yeah, definitely. We'll
okay, then I can be patient then, no worries.
Okay, just a few more things off the back of what Nathan was saying. So another comment here was, the Christmas tree is an embodiment of Lucifer. At least that is what is speculated. There's a whole lot around the Christmas tree, isn't there? With it.
Can I try? Yeah, go on. Can I, when you're ready, I'm going to try in on that as well. Go on.
Yeah. Okay. So you can now if you like. Go on.
Sure. I think that there's a lot of misconceptions around Christmas trees, I think, and around a lot of theology. And I think hopefully that we can get to a point where we have enough critical confidence to think critically about the purpose of these things. Because if not, we may end up putting them through a lens of a belief system that, if we're honest, we haven't found the original documents of the Bible. We haven't found the original scriptures, and there's so many different Bible versions, and so we'd have to go, well, which one is accurate and true and which one is not. In fact, I was going to put up a statement previously about how the Bible told slaves to honor their masters, probably, and then see whether we should have been taking that as verbatim also. Because if we think and live critically, then we have to look at, okay, yes, we know that our ancestors left documents. Those testaments were kept and managed. And since then, they have been exacerbated, manipulated, and translated into languages that our ancestors did not speak. And a comment earlier on was about... Go on, sorry? Okay, I'll finish 100% with you. Okay, I'll finish first. That's okay. So about Ezekiel. Now, when you mentioned the comment about Ezekiel not having the words to describe certain things, my concern was that, well, first of all, have we seen the original text of Ezekiel, first of all, the first-hand documentation and text, and have we compared and analysed critically the translations of these texts? Now, people who speak multiple languages, including yourself, know that not all concepts are transferable very well to other languages. And so this may have got lost in that a bit more so, rather than more than we think, then he didn't have the word necessarily. There could be a bit more to it than that. I think it's worth looking into that too. Also, the tree. Okay. So, for any sort of like, sorry, Rassis, I'm going to bring you up in here, Rassis, right now. So for those Rassis and herbalists out there, and whether those Hindu herbalists too, and African herbalists, and shaman and medicine doctors, plants have a purpose. Plant-based medicines were very, very important to our ancestors, very important. In fact, technically, the first form of maybe, I don't know, botanical medicine, such alchemy, etc. Now, the solstice tree itself, I call it solstice tree because that's kind of like really what it is, really, the solstice tree. When you extract it from the religious perspective, at least, has many, many properties. So did you know we used to make like fern, well, not fern nestle, but fern pin tea. We used to make tea from the needles of the Christmas tree.
Yeah.
Okay. And the needles from that tree, well, the tea from that was very good for us in that time of year. Did you know we also studied it in the same way that we should be studying melanin? Because unlike all other trees, evergreens have the ability to stay green and perform photosynthesis even in the coldest weathers. Whereas many other trees drop their leaves and are not able to absorb and process sunlight in the coldest weathers or all year round. And that was special. And the study of that was important to, okay, how exactly is that photosynthesis working? And very likely, although I'm inferring here a little bit, there were some comparisons to, as we know previously, the whole chlorophyll version and the whole melanin situation. Also, pine pollen, for example, the pollen from these trees is one of the very few sources of vitamin D from plants. So did you get that? So come cold weather times, when there's not much sun around, there are some plants which are able to maintain and harvest and provide to the consumers vitamin D. And I think we can probably all agree that vitamin D is essential. Well, actually, I think it's a hormone, but they can basically provide compounds to produce hormone D. It's a hormone, not a vitamin, technically. Go on, Nathan.
Yeah, exactly, bro. Like even that, yeah. So imagine, like even that period, right, that you're talking about. Yes, yeah, the significance of the fern, of the conifer and that, right, and all of that. That's beautiful. Like having the benefits and understanding that. But if that was, say, like that was some form of tradition, how has it got to people chopping them down and decking it with silver and gold? Do you know what I mean?
Well, okay, so
like it's idolatry. Yeah.
Well, I think you could. Well, I think that yes, humans have got a bit misconceived a little bit. In the same way that I would probably say the Bible itself has got so many different versions, and is not necessarily all completely accurate. And which books are supposed to be in there, which one's not supposed to be in there, who took what out, for example.
Exactly.
And so, yes, the harvesting of the tree. Some people may have had to harvest a tree because they weren't living close enough to that forest in order to utilize those nutrients. And if you have told someone, okay, you ain't getting no vitamin D this winter, for example, or you have to cut the tree down, harvest this any plant it might have, for example, and use other parts of the tree also, whether that be for building structures that may provide shelter, for example, whether that making tea from it, again to provide essential nutrients to help your immune system and so on. And I think that we should be looking critically at, okay, what is the true purpose of this practice and what are the benefits to have this practice to humans? Because right now it seems like, should this whole thing fall right down, I'm joking, capitalism and everything else, you'd have humans running around acting like they can't harvest like these trees and take the goodness from them because it's pagan. I'm joking. And how many people would suffer because of that? And then you'd have the herbalists and the shaman going like, whoa. Trees have a purpose. Not always to be chopped down. I'm not agreeing with that necessarily. We should be maintaining those forests and those woodlands, of course. But in the same way how other trees have medicinal purposes and stuff, for example, that we know about. And if we didn't have those trees, there would not be many surgeries happening. In some cases, these for childbirth and so on, from certain plant-based medicines, sometimes used as recreational drugs, but otherwise, I'm not talking just about cannabis here, for example. All the medicines that we have come from plants. Yeah. And so, if we're going to be looking at this thing appropriately, we'll be like, okay, well, in some religious Christian doctrine, they don't allow blood transfusion, which is, I'm not going to say about that particularly, but then at the same time, are we supposed to have no more morphine in hospitals because the worship of that tree is pagan, or and so on and so on. So I think it's really about us thinking critically about, okay, well, what was the original practices? What are the original benefits? And how does that correlate with our ancestors' actual documentation? And if you get a chance, I've got something to show you guys in a second anyway, though. But I do think it's really important for us to look at how our ancestors used trees like this in areas of the world where it was cold, and in order to survive, they may have had to eat meat at times, not just fish, and they may have had to harvest trees at times, and especially if those trees produced one of the very few forms of plant-based vitamin D compounds.
Interesting.
Exactly.
Just off the back of what you were saying there, Corey. So you talk about our ancestors, which I think links quite nicely to what I want to say about paganism. I've got a web page here that helps me kind of articulate it. So I'm just going to quickly share it before you go into more detail about what you want to talk about, Corey. But I just want to quickly show this. So can you see the screen?
Oh, I can, yeah.
Yeah, so it's talking about how Christmas trees started, and here it emphasizes the notion of it being pre-Christian, and it was used by pagans. The branches of evergreen trees were used to decorate homes during the winter solstice. Yeah, as it was made for them to think of the spring to come. So it was all about looking forward to spring. As we know, the Christmas trees are evergreen.
That's
right?
interesting. Yeah.
It is really interesting because we also know that during December, there is an alignment with the constellations. Something quite interesting happens on the 22nd of December with regards to... Sorry.
Yeah, go on. Go on. I'll let you carry on because that's really exciting stuff. And carry on, Miss Root.
Yeah, I was just going to just emphasize what happens with regards to the sun and how we go up a couple of degrees, don't we, on the 22nd, which is us looking forward to spring coming back. So it all revolves around food and our survival, and actually it aligns also with what we were talking about with regards to the calendar. So further down here, it also talks about the calendar. So really the calendar, if you want to take it back to our absolute human nature, the calendar and the importance of the calendar is linking to when our food grows, right? And our connection with the sun. So we measure when to plant certain seeds, when to look forward to harvesting, when it's time to shelter. We look at plants, and we can also look at the sky and have an idea of what's about to happen with regards to the earth, right? So that really is why we invented calendars. Obviously now we're capitalizing off days and times and all of this stuff, but its absolute natural purpose, it is to guide us as to when we should be doing certain things for our human survival, right? I hope that makes sense. I'm just going to start sharing the screen. I just thought that was really interesting.
I'll leave it for a second, because I think that's leave it for a second if you can, because you made some really great points about decoration. I was thinking how much I'm not sure how exactly, but I wonder if the trees help provide some, I don't know, draft exclusion, you know, the branches, and possible insulation too. And the tradition of having reefs now, for example, we tend to have reefs.
Yeah.
We tend to have reefs often, like sometimes flat ones, sometimes round ones. And I'm thinking a reef maybe underneath your door, like a draft excluder, may have purpose. A reef on your windowsill, again, may have purpose too. And so I think it's really about us looking at what are the properties and principles of these things, and how could we use them. I think that was a really great article also. And I think that one thing I'll probably want to keep in mind also, I think you mentioned about pagan stuff as well, because I do want to say that in some context, it is portrayed that people that aren't practicing Christianity or religions as such are often demonized as heathens or as pagans and other things. And I also want to say that I think sometimes that idea can be a little bit misleading. If God has created us all, and God has created us all, okay, and I think that sometimes it can be a little bit much sometimes if we sort of branch, okay, well, you're not a person of God, you got to be a heathen, you got to be a pagan, or you got to be less than. It's kind of like a real form of like maybe like religious prejudice a little bit. And if you think about sort of the story of these things, often prejudice has been tied up quite a lot in this situation. And I think that if we really have an idea of what the sort of essence of God is, then it should be of love and oneness, really. And it's respecting and appreciating other cultures. And yes, if we can help and support, then of course we'd help and support. If not, then we can maybe leave them be. But to persecute them because they're choosing not to practice as we are practicing, from my experience, from my opinion, I would say is in line with colonial doctrine, in which we will bring a document you cannot even read, state that we are these people of God, and then commit terrible acts of cruelty upon you until you start practicing as we have told you to practice. And so we need to be hopefully we should learn from these things, really sort of have a good takeaway that actually there's more to it than that. In the same way, the same book, another information about certain people were destroyed, i.e. tribe of Dan and so on, for example. We can probably look into that a bit more if you want to. Look at actual documentation and artifacts if you want. I'm more than happy to do that with you, Nathan. And again, I'll hark back to the situation of some books say to honor your master and say things such as allow your master to sleep with your partner. And if you get raped or battered or beaten, take that as a sign from God. I'm paraphrasing a little bit there. And we should know that, okay, these are translations in a language that was used by the very people, in many cases, hurting us or hurting people. And certain scriptures were not being spoken about. Certain scriptures from prophets that may have been female sometimes were not being added. And some prophets were being selectively chosen. And so to discern correctly in this critical thinking, we should be like, okay, well, how do we see well, not sure the term is right now. Or I'm gonna say the forest through the flames. I'm joking, but so we need to be able to discern like the accurate parts of this in order to really be able to sort of get a good solid grounding on where we are and how this thing works and operates. And
I just want to say, sometimes you can't get an accurate source, but it's okay to not have the accurate source, because at least you will have formed a personal opinion, right? At least you will have done some legwork, and in your mind's eye, something will resonate. And I think that's more important, because especially now we're in an age of information overload. Like, once you start going down that rabbit hole, it's intense, right? There's so many opinions, so many articles, so many sources. But ultimately, this is what's going to shape you, your identity, who you are, what you believe. And what I like to advocate is it's okay to have an opinion. It's okay to think critically. It's probably more important to have that about you than to just go with the status quo, because the status quo is the TV, the radio, and newspaper, and all these things are controlled by people who have an agenda, right? So I think that's more important. With researchers, and unfortunately in the Western Hemisphere, we're so fixed on getting accurate information, like the truth, but sometimes you can never get the truth. Sometimes it's okay to not have the truth. It's okay to not know 100% what something is or what something means, but it's not okay to just go with what someone says. Check it out yourself, right? Have a good look. Don't be lazy, because it's only going to shrink your world if you do that. And this is an abundant universe. It's you can have your own opinion. So I just think it's important to emphasize that.
And I think that's a really good point too. I think go and continue, Nathan, if you want to. You can go ahead. Go first.
Yeah, I think I've got a delay because I think I'm late. I've got that latency again. It's just started. That's why there's a bit of whatnot. Anywho, just going to that slave part. Just want to touch on that about slave obey your earthly masters. But it's one of those key scriptures which was given, that was instilled into blacks during slavery by the oppressor, right? But if you actually, when you talk about it, you got to first think about who was the laws given to in particular. It wasn't like, obviously, idealistically, this is what the plan was for everyone to be able to obey certain laws, right? And what was written. When you look at the word slave as well, the etymology, no one was actually beaten and whipped as a slave growing up, and it's supposed to be, but the commandment was this: obey your earthly masters, and it's like servants. Basically, it's just like being obedient to your manager at work. So if you're working for someone, obey them. They're going to give you commands. You've got a protocol. You've got something. It's like honoring your parents. Your parents give you house rules. Where do these rules stem from? Having like morality and things like that. Now, if we is to be in a world, one thing which is cool is the fact that we are dispositioned as people, because yes, there are laws, rules, and regulations, and people they've attached a bad stigma to the Bible, saying that the colonizer gave us this, but they don't follow what's written in there themselves. If it was that important and powerful, they would follow it and rely on it. But no, it was used to certain verses were used to control a certain amount of people. Why was it pushed mostly on blacks? Why? Because we are naturally inclined here to be submitting to a creator. We're the one that's more inclined here to creation, the natural world. So we had a manual of how we're going to deal with it. It's the same way. Like, say, for example, I want to teach. I worked out how to build a car. What do you do afterwards? You create an instruction manual to show how to do it, how to build cars. The same, it's like how to live. It's all trial and error in it. For you to be able to create a manual and instructions on how to live, you've had to have lived. People live and die for you to learn. Like, someone would have had to have fallen off a cliff to know it feels like to fall off a cliff. That person's dead. So then you'd like stay away from the edge. This is why we build barriers or battlements. It even tells you about that in the book as well. Usually when you build a house, you need to have a balcony, a battlement, so people don't, like, say if I went to go and fix the roof, if I fall off this roof now above here, more than likely I'm going to have damages. I'm going to probably break a leg or even die if I land on my head. So it even tells you in the scriptures, when you're building a house, have a battlement around the edge so you don't fall off. You've got a balcony, like a barrier. So there's little things like that. But someone that would have had to have fallen off for you to know, think, you know what, to stop that to prevent that problem, we need to build a fence or something to stop from happening. So all these instructions have always happened through error, right? Someone's had to gone wrong somewhere for people to start to develop. This is why even certain scriptures, which says written by this prophet or written here, it's come through learning. A lot of it's there for your learning, and that's exactly what it is. So again, with all the stigma attached to it, not many people have the obedience, because we're always trying to wonder what will happen with this, and there's always room for argument, room for us to, you know, have a disagreement, for example. And if everyone was just, you know, idealistically, oh, you know, it would be great if everyone was the same and we had the world is a better place. We have variations for us, as Miss Root's saying, so we can actually, it shapes us, so we can actually decide and have the choice and the freedom of choice to make the decisions. And that's our cognitive upbringing. You know, you've got all these options, you've seen this, and then you make up your mind. It's like, you know what, this suits me. I'm going to live like this. I think this is the safest way. So, for example, if I want to eat good, I'm gonna have to refrain from eating certain things like my diet. If I want to live amicably with people, even, you know, you have the good, the bad, the ugly in this world. You have to see a bad person, so you know, all right, I don't want to be like that. But what if it was just natural for everyone to be murderous and kill, or rapists and, you know, abusers? You know, someone would have to give the instructions not to do that. If I was to say, you know, we should live, we should just love everybody. Let me sit next to someone that's going to molest my child then, and oh, no, I love you, be cool. No, there's rules, there's regulations. You don't want anyone touching your children. But if everyone's going to be like, you know what, there's no laws, no rules, you know, it'll be chaos.
Okay, I'm not, okay, sorry, can I speak? Sorry, so I do apologize. What I'm advocating for is not for us to be not advocating for us to say that, oh yeah, it's okay for people to abuse us. No. I don't think that we should be enabling anybody the abuse. I do not believe that at all. That's not what I'm suggesting. What I'm suggesting is that often from certain narratives, people often so far pick and choose which parts of which things they tend to want to go along with. And it kind of like, don't get me wrong, we are supposed to use the things that work for us. I do agree with that. We are also supposed to be honest too. And I think that it has to be a joint process whereby if we're going to be honest about what's happening, we need to be honest entirely. And that means that even if something is not what we want it to be, we are in a place where we can at least acknowledge the reality of that. And so there's many things that we don't know about the Bible, you could say. There's many things that we don't know about our ancestors' actual scriptures and what they were talking about in many ways. And it's okay for us to not know. As soon as we start, as soon as we allow ourselves to forget about the things we don't know, then we assume these things are, we do know them. And then we start making judgments and choices based on things that we think we do know. Well, we basically gaslight ourselves into thinking we do know. And actually, it's okay to not know. Yeah, it's okay to ask questions and to grow. Okay, well, from what we know from this may be the best option. From what we know from this, that may be the best option. And I'm going to go back to sort of the whole solstice tree thing and being compared to the devil possibly, or being compared to some things. And don't get me wrong, I mean, I can see how people can think, oh, tree worship is, I'm thinking, okay, tree worship, sun worship. If you look at the actual writings of people who they said to be doing that, they may have revered these things. They may have revered the sun. They may have revered trees, for example. But often it was not in the way we thought it was. So in the same way that the sun provides much growth, especially around the spring and life and fruitfulness and plants, that's very important to us. And so for us to honor that, sometimes we may get carried away. Some people may be a bit too lovey-dovey about the sun. But what's happening is that, oh, one moment, sorry, we're projecting.
Phone's a perfect example. Have you ever lost? Yeah, sorry, just again. People take it too far.
We project our ideas now onto people that lived hundreds, if not more, years ago. And I think that we can't get that. We're not there talking with them. So we should be asking more questions and be acknowledging things that we don't actually know, but also acknowledge the actual properties of it. What's happening a lot is that we're taking this stance where it's demonized, and by doing so, we're not learning about ourselves or our ancestors or the practices. So yes, solstice trees and that may have been using it for other means, but then to try and associate a solstice tree with slavery, and then with hanging babies from them, and I think they're a bit of a reach without having the citations and having the direct evidence for that. That's a bit of a reach. In the same way that you couldn't present those things as facts in a document or dissertation. Where's your citation? Where's your evidence for that? Yes, you can infer these things, but these things have such a strong and powerful narrative associated. And when you say that, it deserves to be acknowledged accurately.
Yeah.
If not, we're just pumping out narratives that are damning, actually, in many ways, and traumatic to people with no evidence to prove it's actually happening. And at the same time, then, we may not be able to justify or know much about, okay, how can we use this tree? If we're ever stuck in a cold place in the world, how can we use this tree to survive? What did God give us this tree for? Okay, because wherever, like those acts, I'm pretty sure, if you know what I mean. And this is about us being connected to and also connected to nature. Often you find that connection to nature is heavily demonized by these types of doctrine. And it's about time we sort of acknowledge that a little bit, because if the signs in the sky were given to us in that method, is that not a connection to nature?
Well, that was my whole point when I brought up that article, because everything is of the nature, right? So regardless of what discussion we have on our Sunday session, you will find that it will always link back to the natural aspect of all things, because ultimately that's what we are, right? Part of the nature. It can always link back to that. So even this discussion about Christmas, the Christmas tree, Santa Claus, presents, all of that, will have some sort of verification of its practice in the nature. And I think that article that I put up earlier was a perfect depiction of that, because it shows that, you know, that evergreen tree and, you know, celebrating, looking forward to the spring, etc., etc. You just say, yes, you've got all your demonized ritual connotations of the tree, but actually there's a natural one that resonates nicely with me. I can go with that. Do you know what I mean? That sits nicely with me. Yeah. So I think I just wanted to kind of emphasize that point, because the nature really does validate most of our questions. Questions are in the nature, in my experience.
Yeah, and I definitely agree with that. I think we should probably at some point do a show on about the how we got to a place where we're not allowed to appreciate nature, because I think in many cases it is demonized. Like, if we appreciate nature, people also saying you're I don't know, and it's something negative, because you may have an affinity or a respect, and may show that respect for the sun, or for a tree even, or that medicine. That tree may have saved your wife, husband, nan, father, yourself, because of the medicine from the tree. And afterwards, if you revere the tree, like, something, I'm so grateful for what God gave me in that tree, or what, you know, what tree that tree gave to my family through God, etc. That could easily be misinterpreted a couple hundred years later, by in a whole different language you didn't speak yourself, and then be used as a means of, okay, let's detach these people from their source, from their origins. If I go back, and my example would be the witch trials. They persecuted midwives and elder female wisdom keepers for the knowledge that they had that was essential in so many ways, for coming of age for female specifically, and for men, for giving birth, looking after the elderly. A lot of herbalist-based medicines, for example. They persecuted and did bad things to these people under the guise that it was ungodly. And arguably, you could say, a lot of these people, by the way, some of these people practiced. They weren't like, there wasn't people like, they weren't literally flying on broomsticks. They used their broomsticks to clean the floor and sweep, for example. Yet they were persecuted, and we now know that actually the persecution of them was about control of knowledge and information. The demonization of them was akin to the whole sort of reefer madness propaganda that was propagated in the 1900s. They made out like, oh, a girl smokes reefer, she's a black man tomorrow. I'm joking. You smoke reefer, you throw yourself out of a window. You smoke reefer, you go psychotic and stuff, which we now know, based on the evidence from those events of propaganda, that actually they were pushing that narrative out there for not good reason. When actually cannabinoids in itself are known to help with more than 100 different diseases and illnesses. More than 100. And so if we go back to the sort of like, again, plants and nature and how we can utilize them, because remember, it all comes from nature. Like you said, it always comes from nature.
All of it.
Yeah.
Even the notion of tree hugging has got a negative connotation now, like you tree hugger. Like, actually, you know how therapeutic and healing spending time on a tree is, touching a tree, sat underneath a tree is incredibly healing.
And the science proves it.
And the science proves it.
I mean, like, there's a whole thing about grounding yourself. And then so are we supposed to not ground ourselves in the way that God created us to, we could say, because of misconceptions of a doctrine that has been translated so many, like, we need to really think critically about this. And okay, so where does this actually fit in? Because at one point we're saying our ancestors mostly wore sandals, connected to the ground, and they were earthing themselves. But now we're saying, oh, we can't earth ourselves now. And again, so there's like,
well, this is it. Yeah, so this is it. Sorry, it's the misconstruction of worship in it. It's more along the lines of, you know, with the respect of, well, if to appreciate the sun, we need it. Yeah, we're always happy when the sun comes out in general. The whole tree hugging thing, even with that, because there's vibrations. It's saying if you can stroke a dog or a cat and get a good feeling from it, right? Then why not hug a tree? Even though you don't talk, it just means there's a differences that people of the misconstruction is bowing down to it as if the tree created you. You have benefits. I think what's happened is that people are starting to decide what happened over time. They decide to idolize certain things rather than appreciating the one that created the things that we need, the one that put the provisions in place, the one that created the sun and all that. Right. And what made it even worse with the idolatry, what happened is then people started to create shrines, like they start to create images, graven images of these objects. Imagine this is where the mockery came in. But if you was to build a statue of something and then you start to ask that statue for help, you created it, you can destroy the same the statue that you created and you idolize it. That's what happened. Now we create things to rely on, which we understand, right? Like, for example, to make our life, like calculators, cars, phones. But what's happened? So a lot of people they feel useless without their phone now. They lose their phone. It's like they feel naked. So that's why imagine we've got to that point. Rather than just thinking, okay, we should appreciate the creator that gave us the ability to create these things and devices, the light bulb and all that. But what happens in, like, as Corey said, we kind of overdo it. We go overboard with it. I've been there myself. Even my phone. When you become conscious of your activity, I've lost it. When I find it, I feel, gosh, thank you. I'm hugging it like a baby. And that's because of what's happened. Like we get a bit too far-fetched rather than being grounded, if anything, actually naturally grounded, appreciating the life that's out there rather than taking it for granted. And end up doing all this idol worshipping. It's just like the misconstruction. Me, I love when the sun's out. I'm baking it all day long because I know the creator has given us that for a reason. Because I know in this climate, once that sun's gone, even was it yesterday? It was cold. But when that sun was out, it was beating on my skin. I was thinking, you know what? Even though it's winter, yeah, I'm out here. I didn't even want to go into the house. It was when I was on my way to on our meeting yesterday on the way, and the sun came out for a bit, and I was enjoying that.
Mm-hmm.
It's funny when I listen to you talk, Nathan. You still talk about the creator like it's this external thing, like this one man created the sun and the moon and the right.
You understand where you're coming. It's just like to be how can I say? It's like familiarization, because some people have a problem with the name. Say, I'm just using an example, the name Jesus, because of where it comes from. But because everyone knows that, I don't even like referring to us as black people, but it's just to familiarize. I just know there's an external force, because I can't create the sun.
Or internal, you know?
Or internal.
Or
But even
internal.
internal force, either way, if I had the ability to create the sun itself, then that means I'm not going to be subject. I don't need to be subject to something that I create. That means obviously there's an external force that we're a subject onto. Like basically, a nest was laid, provisions were put in place, then we existed. So I have to appreciate that, if anything. So that's what I'm saying. Because if I like in turn, obviously we've got the spirit of the of creation inside us, because we were created. So it's going to be it's going to be within us ultimately. If there's no sun now, then I don't know what we would be. I can't say, because I've never experienced life without it.
I don't want to.
I've never experienced life without it.
But that whole discussion needs to be had separately, right?
Yes.
But just listening to you speak, you know, I just think that's something I've made a note that we need to talk about that. Because I think sometimes things are taken far too literally, and we miss opportunities because of that. Because of that disconnection. When everything's connected, everything is God. We are reflections of the divine. Everything, including the birds and the trees and everything is a representation of the Most High. It's not this, in my opinion, in my experience, from what I can see, from what I've read, right, that it's not just this one thing that's created and we all exist. We all exist because it's all consciousness, right? But anyway, we'll go there another day. There's a few comments. I know, Corey, I'm not sure whether you want to go into a short little presentation, but we've got a new person that I've not seen on our platform before, Todd One, who is making some really valuable contributions to our live chat this evening.
Yeah, I know.
And there's some, have you noticed? There's some buzzwords even from our other live sessions that is absolutely tapped in. Right? Research him or her, not sure, but I've been putting up the comments and absolutely perfect. So thank you for being here, Todd One. This last comment here as well, I believe the energy that created the universe is the same energy in us all. Exactly. I couldn't have articulated it. This is what I was trying to say, Todd, right? So yes, it's external and it's internal. This is what I was trying to say. And that's just based on my reflections and while I've researched and while I've experienced in my 40 plus years on the earth, right? And that makes sense to me. It feels right, yeah. But
100% agree.
Yeah. So
it's just I think it's been articulated differently. That's all. Because as I said, if I was to put myself on that pedestal, then my humility would lack. I'm humble to the world that I'm in, because I know things were created for us to survive in. I couldn't create the things. What we've done, we've had the power to do more. Like, for example, practicing medicine, for example, like mixing herbs, seasoning up food and things like that, being able to make recipes. So obviously we've managed to be a reflection of our creator to create better things for ourselves, like eating instruments and being able to climb, or even to make climbing easier. There's certain people that can't climb, but we learn how to build a ladder. So things like that. So that's one thing that I have to be grateful for as well, is the fact that we've been given the ability to be creators as well.
Yeah. We create ultimately, right? We are the ones that are dictating what happens here on Earth. Collective consciousness, right? Even the period that we're about to glide on into. The irony is many of us don't even want to glide on into this highly technical, digitalized way of being. Yeah, but there's no going back now. We are going there, because there is a collective consciousness that's created that reality, whether we want to accept that or not, right? We moan about the mobile phones. We moan about, oh, the children are using social media and this is projecting the reality, but we're buying the phones. Yeah, it's supply and demand, and so. But anyway, we're not going to go too much into that. Corey, I know you have some information you want to share with us. Are you ready? And then we'll wrap up after you've done your thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. And so you want a second, just getting ready? A second, just getting ready. I think that was really well said. And yeah, I think this actually has been a really good talk about us looking at things, being aware of things and how they are, and also being willing to sort of question and take out those gems, those nuggets of truth that are in there. Because even in modern times, it can be a broadcast of information, and not everybody gets the same narrative. In fact, in many cases, people get different alternative narratives. And so I think it's really, really important that actually we're allowing ourselves to, let's put this, look into things critically, and be willing to do so, and be happy with also not knowing. Sometimes not knowing something is a great opportunity to learn and grow. In fact, most of the time, not knowing something is a wonderful opportunity to learn and to grow. Okay, and so 1 second.
Indeed.
Okay, so let me just since we was talking, I thought let me just add two extra onto what I was doing. So that's kind of what I was doing just now, and so this is where we're at. Let's have a look. Oh, 1 sec. And so we're about to get up 1 moment. Sorry.
All right. Just while you're getting ready, I'll just say that that's what makes us human, isn't it? The ability to think. That's what separates us from the animal kingdom, right? We've got that free will. I mean, animals have more free will than we do, but we've got that brain that allows us to challenge and then create off the back of whatever it is we're challenging, right? So that's why the critical thinking aspect of things is very important, because we then make the next move and determines what happens here on Earth, quite literally, right? So it is important to be thinking for oneself.
Yeah, definitely, and allow us to have to grow and be wrong if need be. Because sometimes we're correct, sometimes we're not, and it's okay to be wrong at times, as long as you know that it's a perfectly human experience and a human condition to make mistakes or to think we know something we don't know. As long as we are willing to address that honestly and openly, that's really for me the main takeaway is that are we willing to honor and address that appropriately.
Yeah.
So, see, can we put this in? 1 moment, sorry, because I've got something here that I wanted to utilize, and
one saying the bottom line: drop these European holidays, Xmas trees, and save the black money for 5 years. Let's start there.
Well, okay. On that note, okay, we could say that that's not a bad idea necessarily. What I would like to say is that things like that could really, really help. Now, just to clarify, you probably know me, I love Marvel, and I know it's great. And I think on that note there, we could say a similar thing if you wanted to about the whole launch of certain movies and stuff. I will go into the context of Black Panther, for example. Black Panther grossed more than $1 billion in the first weekend. And a lot of those people, not all of them were Swazi, but a lot of those people were Black people. Question really is that we did that to celebrate. Yeah, it was a great story, great iconography. It was very empowering for us in so many ways. Would it have been more empowering, though, than us investing our own $1 billion or whatever into a project that we actually created? I'm not sure about that. And so, yeah, I agree that we could use our monies in other places. The question really is where then? Because I think that I think it's where, and we should be able to ask ourselves, yeah, we should do that. I know some people don't like Christmas. I get it. Some people it's more stress than it's worth. Some people just don't like it. Some people it contradicts their ethnic or religious beliefs, or traditions or practices, and I get that also. I think that the comment about earning money and investing in ourselves, that part there, we can definitely keep though. And the thing that we should be talking about, okay, so how do we fund that kind of project, and where does the money go? Who looks after the money? Because like we know what we're not saying, but you know what that community is like. Someone gets some money. Who's looking after that money?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm joking, but we're going to be looking. What car are you driving next week? I'm joking about that. So we need a way of having establishments that can do these things, and we can entrust in, because it could be completely trustworthy. It could be completely trustworthy and secure, but whether we think it is or not is a separate thing. And so many times, our questioning of things unnecessarily or challenging things has brought down sometimes very good people attempting to do very good things, that actually weren't allowed to do those things, but not for good reason.
Well, we talked about this briefly when we did our discussion on the Black Wall Street, right? I know we're going off on a bit of a tangent now, but I just think this is such a highly relevant comment here, because it kind of goes 360 degrees on what we were saying at the beginning of this, when we were going in the supermarket, people are filling up their trolleys with food, and most of this food's probably not going to get eaten. This is a waste of money. Like people buying Christmas jumpers that they wear once a year, etc., etc. These things are ultimately a waste of money, right? When we talked about Black Wall Street, we kind of concluded that people need to sort themselves out first before you can sort out any type of community. So with regards to where that money goes, that money needs to sort you and your family out first, right? Yeah. You need to invest in the family. It starts with the family. Get that right first. Buy yourself a property, invest in some solid foundations, some solid investments, and then we can talk about affecting communities and then society. Because that's what we do a lot of the time, is we want to go out there and talk about community spirit and helping the Black community, but actually you can just about afford to pay your own bills, right? So that's where it all needs to start. Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Yeah. You need to get that first step sorted, right? And then we can talk about helping others. I know it's a hard lesson, but it's the truth. You cannot help anybody if you have not helped yourself.
That is true. And one thing I do want to add to that is how much, that's a really good point, how much community is required for that, essentially. So I remember that, so in many other communities we know, it's not, people aren't doing it on their own as one, like usually they're doing it as part of a small collective, or with or certain other resources that are part of another group often. And so, yeah, we need to be able to build up and establish systems that people can build up and feel completely independent. I think we also need to pull together in some areas too, though, so that we can do these things together, even if we haven't got to be giving each other things necessarily, but just us talking about our journey, or at least communicating and cooperating and supporting each other. I'm doing this and you're doing it as well. Well done. How well have you done today? How well have you done this week? And so, where are the growth? Did that part work for you? Oh, yeah, that worked with me. That part worked for you. Maybe not so much. And then exchanging and comparing that. I think the hierarchy of needs thing is really essential. I think that it's really worth us noting also as well, though, that the communities that are very famously documented that Maslow's part of use that structure to dismantle communities and cultures. And so we also need to note, okay, so what are the obstacles for us to re-establish those things, knowing now that actually there are barriers in place to make things create more resistance to doing that. In the same way that you could say, okay, well, why don't certain people get like a whole sort of Black men might try and apply for jobs, for example. It's an argument's sake. And this is not a very modern narrative, but let's go with this anyway. But they've got the ethnic names. And so they're in piles of CVs on desks, and they're just getting like slipped to the side. Now we know the data's already proven this has happened. If your name is too ethnic, then you may not get the same kind of reception, even in your CV, as other people. But without knowing that, people might assume that you think Jaquan, or whatever you could say, thingy, or whatever that sort of hyper or very distinctive ethnic named person is just not trying hard enough. He's not pulling himself up from his bootstraps, for example, and so on. And so we really need to be aware of sort of the barriers in place for that and help that person identify the barriers and then help hold those barriers accountable if they're unjust. Because one thing I think in our community at the moment we haven't done very well is we haven't held those barriers accountable very well. It's easy for us to just say something, you ain't no good. Go on, Nathan.
Yeah, I'm just gonna add as well. We've had the whole just the you know, like being able to take care of yourself before taking care of others as well. Now it's like obviously in this world, in this society that we live in now, yeah, because the whole being on we're on the consuming end of the scale, isn't it? And I just had to go back to referring back to the whole Black Wall Street thing when we was talking about you know, because what happens with a lot of these festive seasons, it's very monetizing, very heavily monetizing. Like, and then there's a lot of waste, like even from Easter, Valentine's, Christmas, all of them, Halloween, right? We know what they're doing. They know and we're the heaviest consumers. And then I had to go back to like watching these successful groups and cultures and that, and how they got to where they got to. So, or to even start from somewhere to start to create generational wealth from scratch, from the get-go. So I was like, all right, when we was laughing at them living like sardines in a house, like in a 12-bedroom, there's so many. And then I thought, all right, let me go back and do some math. Let me do some maths on my own property. So when I worked it out, because it's only like with bills and everything, right? It's about just with all the bills, Wi-Fi and everything in my house. It's about $600 a month. It's not that deep, right? But it's not that deep. But then me on a certain salary, breaking that down and with all the other expenses by yourself, then it starts to add up. So I was thinking, all right, let me break this down. Put in, for 1 year exactly, yeah, no more longer than a year. So, you know, it's light work for some. It seems long, but after that 1 year, you're going to reap some benefit. Having 2 people or 3 people in your house, but you're sharing a room, bunk beds. You might sound mad because you've got no privacy, this and that and the third. But these people roll these things out where you're spending as little as only like $200 a month for 1 year. In that year now, imagine if you just come into the country doing that and your credit score's low. Within 1 year, you're taking out a credit card and having a mobile phone for that year, right? You can get your credit in 1 year. You can save 80 on a $2,000 salary as well. Working 12 hours a week, 3 times a day in a warehouse. Probably not the greatest of job, but you can save 18 grand and have a credit score of above 800 with 1 year. And that's because you actually now split the bills for 1 year. But we ain't thinking like that because you still got that crabs in a barrel mentality. Do you know what I mean? So imagine it's like 1 year that you can make a big difference now. You can now start to invest in property in 1 year. And that's just by sharing, just you know, spending that 1 year. So like one might say, oh gosh, I want my private time. They want the private. Yeah, you're not going to have it. But then obviously, if you've got like even in my property, it's a 1 bedroom. There's 2 rooms. There's ways about it. Just you have to remember, there's some light at the end of this tunnel. 1 year is not going to kill you. Because I think, how many years have I spent and not really elevated? It's good knowing now than gone.
Yeah, I think you made some really great points there, and I think that touches on to sort of, I think, dismantling of the Black community quite a bit, where in order for us to share and cohabit in the same house, we have to acknowledge each other's flaws as well as the benefits, as well as each other's benefits, I would say, and good points. And I don't think we're really ready to do that. And I think most of the time, because we aren't ready to do that with ourselves either, or have somebody else be exposed to our flaws and be okay. So, well, listen, yes, I am human, and I am not perfect. Okay, I do strive to do such and such and such and such, and these are the things that aren't perfect. I don't really care about the moment, and that's we should be honest about if that's what we want, for example. So if it's not harming anybody, for example, and it's allowing us to succeed, then that kind of should be okay a little bit. And this could be something as bizarre as, I don't know, maybe they're in the house is full of Christians, but the person wants to go to the retreat to earth every now and again. Maybe the house is full of other people, and then the person, maybe, I don't know, maybe the person smokes, maybe quitting, maybe not quitting. And I think that we should do our best to try and arrange it so it is all appropriate, so that everybody's a non-smoker and vice versa. But most importantly, the most important thing should be the growth.
Definitely.
And I think we're quick to penalise and be judgmental and persecute before supporting and enabling the growth that is really needed for our entire community. And we've come off, when this is finished, I got a cool idea that I want to share with you anyway. I think that could be really good for us to share off the screen. I've got a little slide that I've kind of like put together. I hope you're kind of ready, because it's a bit, sort of these topics, maybe we have covered some of them, but so I'm going to flick through quite a bit of it. I'm not going to spend too much time on it as such, but I think it'd be good to show a little bit about what we were talking about throughout this session.
Brilliant. So I'm going to put the slides up, and I just want to say what you were saying there about sacrificing for the growth of our community is absolutely fundamental, and we'll chime in further on that in another session. Maybe talk about the Black family. But Corey, I'll leave you here to work your magic.
I could let me see if I can just bring this down a bit. That's okay. I can still see what's going on. Yep. Okay. So, okay, so we spoke about the roots of Xmas, Christmas, and New Year, and I think one of the interesting things about this term Christmas and about some of its origins, especially the connections to, say, in some languages called a Christmas, which is kind of funny, a Christmas. And the idea of it being a time of crossing paths, and you're going to meet people that we care about and spend time with those people is quite an important thing too. I'm not going to spend too much on it, because we're going to flick through. Can you still see that? Okay.
Yes.
Watch this. So we'll do that. So is that visible for you? Okay, cool there.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so you what? Sorry.
Is it perfect? Yeah.
Okay, do you want to read the first line for me, please? We can just like a little testimony.
Yeah. In some indigenous cultures, face painting has been used for ceremonial and spiritual reasons.
Yeah. Okay, and so the use of black paint or other dark pigments could symbolize different things, such as connections with ancestral spirits, evoking protective forces, or making important life events. And it notes that in ancient Egypt, people often used a cosmic substance called kohl, which was a black paste made from various materials. It says like lead, copper, and other elements. Kohl was applied around the eyes, and it served both cosmetic and practical purposes, such as protecting the eyes from sun's glare and warding off evil spirits, it says. And I think, okay, the warding off evil spirits part, we can do that for a second, that's cool. But the fact that it acted as a natural or ancient sort of sunglasses kind of experience.
Yeah.
Again, these are things that we don't often even consider, often in many cases, regarding the application of what we think is just makeup or cosmetic. This was a technology that would allow people to traverse through sometimes brilliant sun, or low-level sun possibly, and have a competitive edge if you was going to say somebody without it, that maybe didn't have sunglasses or other forms, that may have been riding a camel or a horse or even walking, but needed to get somewhere. Being able to see and vision is really important, and preventing sun glare, as we know today, if you're on the road in the winter sun and sun glare gets you, it's not good. We know that it's not good at all. And the same goes for the summer also. So this is an example, for example, of when these kind of things was used for a really well thought out technical purpose that even today we still require. I think that's really important. And so I thought I'd really note the fact that using pigments and paints has been known to be used. And so these things have been used by people in the past. And the idea of us marking our face or drawing on our face, or some people covering their face with that, isn't always noted as a bad thing. And if you've learned anything from recent times, I would say about how sometimes things can be flipped around or inverted, the meaning of them, or there can be confusion around it, whether it's earthing, whether it's the medicinal purposes of a solstice tree, for example, or many of the other elements associated with this time of year. I.e., like we tend to eat a lot, quite a lot, but there's good reason for that, because we may need to burn more calories quite often, and so there often is a lot of although fasting, by the way, this time of year is also very important too. I would note that our ancestors did do some fasting around this time of year also. It wasn't just all gluttony. So please do note that. There was a time for feasting. There was also a time for fasting too, or going without. And for many people, they might have had a choice to go without. And so building that fasting was a real good way of reserving energy, also reserving food, and also healing. Yeah, so let's fix it. Okay. On this note of we mentioned about how often we don't always allow for others to acknowledge or enjoy our culture always necessarily, and sometimes it can be a case of, oh, is there mockery or other things? So I thought I'd put this little collage together, which depicts a few depictions that are verified sources of swarthy or black people of great renown, we could say. Of course, there's a crest at the top left there, which harks back to sort of, again, there was a group of people that used to wrap a smoke around their head just like that. Do you know who these people are by any chance, Nathan?
So again?
Do you know the group of people that were noted to sort of wear a head wrap like that around their head?
Oh, just a head wrap, basically like the Moors and that as well.
Well, these are Moors, yeah, but this is okay. We'll leave it with that for now. We'll come to that because I don't want to get into too much detail. But there's also some nobility there, and in the centre, that's a Mary and Joseph depiction, or a Black Madonna. Yeah. And so the question really is that are we celebrating our own culture enough to be strong enough in our heart to be like, okay, we love the culture, we love and appreciate and respect those individuals and the work they did and their attributes and qualities. Are we allowing others to also, or is there a skin complexion, skin tone sort of qualifier, whereas by you can't have a black Jesus in your house unless you're black, because otherwise you might just be mocking. Mm-hmm. But actually,
here's a funny.
Go on, sorry.
Yeah, sorry. Just even with that, even with that, for other people to celebrate. But we know, obviously, I'm pretty sure you've probably watched the video as well, where the Catholics, they have the picture of the Black Messiah, and they actually, even though it's still they have it in the churches and they actually worship that. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I'm very because, yeah.
So even though they know it's a different color to them, but they know the true image of the gods, basically, which is the same image as us. And it's a good question that you ask. So obviously you're going to continue anyway. Do we appreciate ourselves and do we celebrate ourselves enough? It's only because of anything that happened after the Renaissance period where we've been infuriated, and obviously other nations are now superior and living, as you can say, in their heaven.
Well, I'm not sure if any races actually are superior, but I get what you mean. It can maybe be perceived in that way. But the truth is that this is not actual real superiority. Superiority doesn't need to boast or project in such fictitious manner, I would say. So that's not what true superiority is, I would say. Usually it's by example. So if I have to lie to make people think that I'm superior in a way, the chances are that I'm not actually superior in that way. I could be inferior, but most certainly insecure. Yeah, do you get that?
Yep. It's like our inferior. Basically, for us to be infuriated, and when I say that, is because we don't, as you say, we're not celebrating ourselves enough. Because we don't like it, rather than we've been taught, like, obviously we've been given a stigma like we're lazy, we're uneducated, we're like anything to do with our ancestry is in the bushland, and we don't know about reading, writing, technology. Whereas once if we are celebrated more, right, our infuriation would diminish, because it's like every time we look at inventions, anytime you turn on your lights and look at the light bulb, even that alone, my people made that. We should be like, you know, big up to those that made this, like, you know, our people. But we always put in a different name. It's the same with Henry Ford. He's got the name, the brand, but we're forgetting the person that was sitting with him, who was a black slave who helped him. And did anyone watch this video recently as well about you know, the Wright brothers in the airplane?
Yeah,
I'll share it with you guys. Basically, there was a black person, can't remember his name, who actually invented something, an aviator thing, well before the Wright brothers, and it was going to be it was going to be anything to a competition. So he already made it. He actually paid for it to get shipped on a train to the location. The thing never turned up. It went missing. Obviously, it went.
I'm very familiar with like that.
Last week I watched this video and I was like, wow. You know, there's certain things which are put in the dark. We are actually on the back burner. A lot of our great things that we've done have swept so far under the rug, we forget how great we are. And that's why we're not celebrated. Because if we weren't that important as people, they wouldn't have to whitewash these pictures like that you've got here on display of Mary and Joseph and that. And Mary and the Messiah, right, and Jesus. So they wouldn't have the need to do that, because we couldn't accept the fact that we are superior in that sense. We are like, and even what Todd has put up, where Todd said in the thing, notice the gold sun circle behind the heads, because our significance with the sun as well. Obviously, the pictures are known as halos in it, but it's the actual sun. We are the children of the sun.
Okay, so off the back of that, I think that there's some great points there. I think one of the things that I kind of noticed as well, though, when you spoke about, I think it's worth us noting this, is that we mentioned Henry Ford's slave. And I think that we probably, at one point, we should do as a bit of research into this individual and check his actual categorization and his status. Because when we call him a slave, even though we kind of know actually that many of these people were very skilled, as we've checked in other records, it still denotes him as less than, I would say. I think he could be called an employee, a servant, a captive of war. I think we might have to do a bit more work, though, for us to sort of call him a slave and then say he invented something. Because for many people, now, I know the truth about many truths, at least not all, many truths about forced servitude and prisoners of war and so on that are now called slaves. But in other times, they might have been called indentured servants. And that term indentured servant and slave in modern terms is kind of like filtered through skin tone, even though in many cases they may have had a very similar experience. I think that for us to talk about somebody in that context, like, oh yeah, so because for the untrained or the unknowing, if you said somebody, oh yeah, Henry Ford's slave built the engine, they'd be like, what? They took somebody from the back of a bush, and then all of a sudden he became an engineer like that. Because most people wouldn't associate.
It's a good one to say. So the best way to look at it is, the best way to look at it, if in one aspect is, did the person willingly go to apply for that post, or was the forced thing? That's the difference to determine whether. But
there are levels to forced servitude, economic levels also, and so in many cases, people do things because of the requirement for resources and other things too. It's not always at gunpoint, and so that's worth noting too, that many ending up slaves or servants, indentured servants, went on to ships in some cases willingly, because they had nothing. They felt they had nothing in their current space wherever they was, due to war and other things. When they arrived and when they got to, it wasn't exactly how they thought that it was going to be in many cases, and they were kind of encouraged to do certain things they didn't want to do, work and otherwise, in order to keep their lifestyle or keep board and so on. And so when we think about slavery, we should do a talk on this, because I feel like we've got such a trauma bond regarding slavery, that it's bringing down the reality of our actual existence and experience. And so for us to sort of use that generic term slave and then put that in context of an engineer, we might have to do a bit more education for not for ourselves, but for the general masses, for them to really get that. Because if not, if a young person, for example, overheard that statement, I don't think they would be able to, not even an old person, depending on what their context was of slavery, if they hadn't witnessed or seen the records of these skills that were attained by these individuals that were forced into labor, or sometimes tricked into labor through contractual means, and sometimes maybe brutalized. If they didn't see the actual level of attainment and skills this individual had through records and evidence, then when somebody says slave, I don't think that they will actually, in many cases, rationalize that in actual fact. Because it's a case of, oh, what? You're saying that a bushman learned to build an engine? It seems a bit too miraculous. And so it's no one's fault. But I think that when we talk about, like, I think that we are very quick to use the term slavery. And one thing I'd like to say is that we don't know all the ins and outs of slavery even just yet. And we really, truly do not. And I think that's something that we should be honest about. We haven't got the records, but then we're inferring, so this happened, that happened, that happened, but we haven't got the records for it. Well, then how do we actually know it happened in such as we think it did? But the people that were telling us initially were telling us not necessarily for good reason. And so we should be able to discern. So I think just so we can move on, because I was thinking much, so we can move on. Maybe
I think before you do move on, there's a comment here. Are you sugarcoating slavery? Which to me suggests that we definitely do need to do another show so you can further elaborate on your perspectives, right?
Because
the comments there on the screen, because we do have a lot of records about slavery, and I think there's levels to what you were saying. Okay, so when we say the word slave, you're suggesting that when you say the word slave, everybody kind of thinks that this is a bushman who doesn't know anything and is forced into doing labor and things that they don't want to do. But then the other level of what you're saying is that actually these people that were enslaved were skilled people. They had talents and things that they specialized in, hence why they were enslaved, right? So
why they were valuable.
Know that they became the person that was purchasing the slave selected that person because that person fits the need within that person's estate, so to speak. Carpentry, whether they've got a cotton field, or we need him to be big and strong, or we've got a huge building on our estate, so we need a lot of female slaves who know how to cook, seamstresses. So these people were selected, right? But what's not to be sugarcoated is that these people, a lot of these people were forced into these situations and to fuel another part of the world, capitalism, to fuel the Western Hemisphere. So that bit's not to be sugarcoated, right?
So I think I agree with that. I do. At the same time, I think we owe it to ourselves to think critically about this and look at the records, because yes, there was definitely some brutality. Yes, there was some enforcement. But I think we've still got the trauma bond burned into our psyche about the whole Root narrative, when we should be identifying actually the Middle Passage narrative from the Root was not actually accurate. It was fiction. It was plagiarized. And in order for us to really sort of reconnect with the reality, actual reality, we need to step out of this gaslit version of slavery and look at the actual realities of slavery. And yes, I'm not saying bad things didn't happen, but this whole victimhood mentality, as if, and I will say this, as if we are the only people in the world who have ever suffered this condition. I don't think that is accurate. There's been brutalities in many forms of slavery all over the world. Now, granted, we're one of the very few who are still lost right now. And I would argue that if this narrative was accurate and true, like it is, for example, with other parts of, say slavery in China, ancient China, slavery in ancient parts of Asia, and even in-house slavery in ancient Africa, but they still know who they are and stuff. And
Yeah,
so
because they still got their surname.
something's gone wrong there. And I think that when we look at the actual records, we still have this very, very false doctrine. I'm saying false because that 10 million more people came from Africa to the Americas, when actually the evidence is there now. It truly is there. And it doesn't mean it wasn't connected. It doesn't mean that we're not family. What it means is that for some reason, the story was told a bit different to how it was. And if I'm honest, that telling of the story causes incredible trauma and self-victimization. And if you look at the impact of that trauma causes addiction issues, low self-esteem, causes a lot of other emotional issues that can contribute towards performance stuff, for example, in school and otherwise. And the reality is that if we told, for example, slavery holistically in schools and said, okay, people were forced into servitude, and here are the people that we know are forced into servitude, all of them, and we looked at their actual conditions and the actual things that they suffered, I think we would all be really surprised. I think what's happening to us right now is very, very not good, because we're very lost in a false narrative that's not allowing us to actually allow ourselves to grow in many cases. In the same way that if I'm holding on to this trauma bond, it had better be in a form of growth. Even if the whole narrative was true and accurate, then we should be holding on to it in a sense of, okay, what can we learn from that so it never happens again? Often when I hear this narrative happen, it's more a case of hark me, how bad it is always for us. Okay, well, that being said, so what are we doing right now to better our situation? Because since that situation and that narrative, our children are getting killed in the belly, you could say. You know what I mean? Population, the bad things happening. We're still suffering forms of disease and mistreatment. In fact, we're suffering mistreatment by the police, generally speaking, economically. Mistreatment in hospitals, generally economically. Mistreatment financially, generally economically. In these many, many areas. And so, okay, this happened. What are we actually learning from it other than, because we can't be playing this card as okay, well, I'm going to say this now, so the people around me are supposed to feel sorry for us or pity us, or no, that's not how the situation is. I mean, look at these images right here. They're not victims. People would have told us in the past that these people on that crest were slaves. That's why the people around the crest in Europe, that's not true. We now know it's not true. We should do. The evidence shows it's not true. But previously, we were told the reason why there were brown people on the crest of Europe was because they were all slaves. Now, the evidence is conclusive that was not the case. There were many brown nobles and otherwise and royals in Europe itself. And so what we should be doing is identifying the cruelties of it and the harshness of it, and then identifying the obstacles and developing a system that allows us to grow from that and succeed today if we can. Because I'm not sugarcoating what's happened. I would say that most people are given a highly warped version of what happened. And if any of you guys want to bring receipts, I'm ready to have the receipts brought. I'm ready for that, as long as you guys are too. Not you personally, but we can discuss it, because we should be discussing it. What really happened? No, there was not 10 million people took from Africa, from West Africa, brought to the Americas. Didn't happen. Okay, the records show that was happened. We were trading and talking between us lands long before then. The fact that there's literal statues and heads of you could say Africoid or Negro features on both sides of the finger, you should show that there was trading happening a long time before that. We get this narrative that, oh no, guess what? You guys couldn't build no ships without us. You guys basically, it's never a narrative that, oh, white people came up out of nowhere with all this power, viewed from who I'm not sure, and snatched up a naga from nowhere, and nobody could do nothing about it. Come on, guys. Come on. So, at the same time, we're talking about. Go on.
So here's the question, just to add to that, because look how strong and powerful we are, right? Even with strength, physical strength. So how is it? It's true. It's a good question. How is it that we allowed it to happen, and why are we still suffering the traumas? Even having someone else's surname to this day. right? Even someone else's. We're their own nation. Why? And the other thing is, why are we heavily? Right, I think it's the other one. Why are we heavily targeted? Not just by one nation of people, but many. Why are we the only people that hasn't got any military might and power? Because there are obviously a lot, and this is evidence that's there. Now, even when it comes to the servitude part, right? Yes, now we know that we can walk into and apply for a certain job, but we know the fact of the matter is we're the only nation, right, on the face of this earth, well, that you can line up how many of the same people, and they'd call each other different nations. Like, I'm from here, I'm this, I'm that, and the third, right? They're not. I say I'm Black British or I'm African American. I'm this. That's the whole identity. But other nations, they can go back generations upon generations and still be from here. They can go to the history before they name things like, oh, where were you from before it was Russia? Before Russia was here, before certain places. We've yet heavily lost people. This is one of the conversations that'll keep going on and be reoccurring until we can actually start to break down things and think, you know what? Yeah, as you said, Corey, what do we do next? Because we could be sitting here day in, day out, trying to find out what happened to us, okay? Because we have to get to the root cause of the problem to come to a solution. It's the same with diagnosing an illness. What caused it so we can prevent it again? Now, we've done many times, we have come together and built. What did other nations do? Blow it up and build, and then build, and then they turn into lakes. Do you know what I mean? Tulsa got bombed. Well, actually, they caused fires and all that. It wasn't just that.
It was bombed by fire, by airplane, by firebombed by the plane.
Yeah, right. It was, and then what was that one in Georgia? They destroyed that, right? Lots of people had to escape. And then they built a lake in Georgia, and there's a whole city underneath there that was made by us. So there has been attempts where we have celebrated our greatness and came together. Other nations have done it for years without being killed off, flooded, bombed, massacred. So there is something which is heavily against us anyway. So I'm still here. Obviously, for the people at the back as well, right? It's good to know what had happened. Yes, other nations have knowledge of when they went through some form of turmoil and wars that were against them when people have happened. But the thing is, they haven't been targeted as heavily as us. Because if we weren't such a threat, then we'd be left alone to live like everyone else, wouldn't it? We would be left alone.
The question really here is that, I think I agree with that. The question is that which group are we exactly? Because there is an issue that if you try and categorize us all by colour of skin alone, not by actual origins, that in that situation there, I mean, so it may create some complications. So if that's reparations, for example, if we get reparations for slavery, so to speak, then does that mean that the African nations that were involved in that too pay us too? Or do we only expect the white people to pay us?
Well, because this is the thing where people have the misunderstanding, because they forgot, because most people talk about the 400 years, but there was another 1400 that happened in Africa. You got to remember, Africa's a continent full of different nations, not skin color. I'm with you on that. Not skin color, but bloodline. Because I don't want to be, because there's a confusion, because everyone has put Africa. Everyone's put Africa under one pedestal, right? Even though it's a continent.
Place. Many nations.
Yeah, it's a large place, right? A large, massive land, which had many nations residing in there, many different bloodlines. They're obviously darker skin because of the climate that they live in close to the equator, right? So it's all of that. But we can put, because this is why, when I was naive with it, I'm there thinking everyone that's black are the same. No, because that's a heavy confusion now. Because we want to talk about bloodlines, ancestral backgrounds, and we're going to confuse.
Isn't that racist as well, though? Like a little bit like if white people said to us, "Oh, all black people are the same," we said that was racist.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
And so,
this is why Somalians and Ethiopians, they know the difference between themselves and Ghanaians, for example. They know there's a heavy difference.
Nathan, thank you. I think, and that's the point. That, so for example, Irish people, so-called say white Irish people, white Scottish people, don't pretend they're not Irish and Scottish, example, or whatever, and so on. Okay, yeah, we might be both Irish, you might be Scottish, you might be Irish, for example, whatever, or you might be white, I don't know, Polish, or white, you're Romanian, but but they still identify their individual group and in the group that they may be part of. Whereas I think for ourselves, like you said, we've like got one sort of homogenous sort of situation where, oh, we're just African, but whereabouts in Africa would it be if that was the case? And which group specifically? Africans themselves are aware of their own individual ethnic, groups and background. They're aware of it. And so in some cases, they may be like, something actually, we're playing, I don't know, football against, it could be Nigeria versus Cameroon or whatever. And something, obviously, I'm for Cameroon because it's my team, and that's perfectly okay. And you might have people who are not very well informed thinking, well, they're both the same people, aren't they? Because they're black. And I think so. We've got so much more to do regarding identifying ourselves and how we fit into this and how we fit into the human story. I think because at the moment, we're, like I said, we're misunderstood, put politely, about what's happened and how we got here and how we sort of progress forward. And some of the questions aren't that great, and some of them might be like a bit thought-provoking. People might not like me saying the idea that, well, if you get reprobations, does all the people who maybe contribute towards that have to pay, or just people of certain appearance? Because the argument would be that, so what? We actually think that some American people weren't being just as brutal to us as before. Not specifically, but like, so what, can one country not enslave another country? Or and so on, that can happen. And we need to be aware that actually it shouldn't be about, it should be about, okay, so if we've been wronged, we're seeking justice, the only way to truly get justice is by getting justice holistically. Because for all we know, I'm joking here, but I'm playing devil's advocate here. The group that we're kind of letting off reprobations that helped them before may still be helping them right now today. Okay, and we're not thinking about this critically at all. If we're going to allow that to happen. If we want justice, we have justice. We set boundaries up. We set barriers up so we can insulate ourselves from wrong happening or occurring to us. And that should be from anybody, even if they look like us or are wearing blackface. I'm joking, but I mean, we even have a blackface. I'm joking, but you get the narrative. Often we can't just assume something because of someone's appearance like that. I think often we get caught in the trap of that. So regarding slavery, we need a talk on this where we can actually go through the evidence in the records and then connect Indigenous people. Because believe it or not, whether in Russia, the Coltrans, there are black or swarthy-skinned people of Russia. Yeah, did you know that?
Yeah,
the Aboriginal Russian people. And so there's people of color all over the world. And what's happening is that no, you can't be from Russia and be a Coltrane indigenous person. You can't be from the American and be an indigenous person. No, you can't be Azawai tribe Indian indigenous person. No, you guys have all got to be African. But wait a minute, doesn't that displace them from their actual culture then? Doesn't that actually displace them from their actual origins and the land that they're actually residing? Now, he's not saying they should be part of one group and unify in order to work together, but that's done best where they actually are, not where they are, but in their actual culture, in their truth. And then we can trade and then build currencies and so on, all around the world, like our ancestors seem to be able to do. At the moment, it's like, something, let's just round all these naggers up into one little spot where we can control them nice and easy. I'm joking here, but we're being like herded essentially into one small sort of group, and it should be okay for us to acknowledge actually Aboriginal people from Australia, Aboriginal people from India, Aboriginal people from Europe, Aboriginal people from America, and other peoples too. But say if we're looking about Aboriginal people or black people, we should be able to identify, okay, these are people, indigenous like us, or of our group, but they're also from a different part of the world, settled. Now, regarding the whole sort of evolution thing and when their skin would have changed and so on, and whatever that situation is there, that right now should be a separate story, separate subject. Because what we do know is that it didn't change when it crossed over some imaginary map borderline. If it was changing to happen, it changed because of a natural occurrence or because of other types of genetic adjustments and adaptation, mutations, which don't happen overnight like that, or over the next day, which means, let's say, for example, we're doing Africa theory solution here, and people travel out of Africa into certain parts of the world. Let's say they went to Russia, so they went to, I don't know, Australia, you could say they went to the Americas, whatever, hypothetically. Then they were there, and nothing saying that every single one of those people there would have turned to a completely different appearance, phenotype. If that, you need to show me the evidence for that. I think in our mind, we've got this idea that actually we can only unify if we allow ourselves to, if we take on a doctrine that actually doesn't need to be, I don't think, and doesn't have the grounding that it's been presented with. And if I'm totally honest, that this idea of out of Africa came from colonial people that were pale-skinned or white Europeans, not from Africans. That's documented. And if not, please bring to me the original authentic texts from those African languages and tribes where they spoke about this prior to that time in 1900, 1941 or whatever, when it was established, the old out of Africa theory, generally speaking. And we can talk about that, because at the moment, we are lost, especially, I think, and just clarify, it tends to be American, Caribbean, brown-skinned people that tends to be the most lost. And that may have something to do with us projecting ourselves to be ethnically connected to somewhere we have no evidence for. Yeah. And actually, if we know, think, okay, let's assume Africa existed and you migrated to all these parts of the world, then why can't we be indigenous people of that part of the world too, and still trade and have a relationship in a family with Africa? Nothing stopping that, I don't think, personally, other than maybe some non-healthy or possible non-healthy and unconstructive doctrine. That's like saying, okay, Black Americans can't work with Black Africans. Why? They've got to go come to Africa and live there, or they've got to call them South African. What? If we're a people, we're a people. And I think that's something that we should really, really hit home with. Anyway, so carry on. Sorry, is that okay?
Yeah, I mean, it's important that we do a separate show, I think, so we can really go into these concepts and thought patterns. But yeah, let's wrap up our show. So if you finish off your presentation and come to a nice conclusion, I've been making notes because I think it needs to probably be the next show. So we'll leave it on a cliffhanger, so to speak. Okay. But if you'd like to continue, try and wrap up within the next 10 to 15 minutes.
Yeah, sure. Okay, so here I've got this is a depiction, authentic depiction of Saint Nicholas. And so I thought it'd be worth us looking at some of the actual people that carried out the acts that are often discussed and spoke about regarding this time of year. And I thought I'd use religious specific ones so that we can know that if a priest does good deeds over winter or whatever to help with SAD syndrome, or even just help with poor people, or anybody that's not even poor but to help and support that community, are we allowed to acknowledge that support and that help? Or in years to come, are we going to call that person, I don't know, a pagan, heathen, or whatever else, because we were confused about the actual historical events that happened, that if not happened in some cases, we may not even be here. And this is another saint. This is actually another Saint Martian. So I'll throw him in there to us also, who did very similar deeds. I'm not going to go through the entire context of the acts that the person did. It's on there. If you want to pause it, have a look through, and read it yourself if you need to. I even put on there a lady also. Why not? Because to be realistic, there's enough female representation in this time of year as if it was male only. And from the previous depictions regarding the Black Madonna, or even any Madonnas, we should know that actually there was man and woman. Yeah, and I think it's really important for us to identify, okay, so where do these traditions really come from? I'm going to go back to the whole sort of persecution of midwives, because the church didn't want them teaching their teachings, calling them witches, pagans, infidels and otherwise, to basically for control power reasons. And that actually, if we look at history, we can see that actually there are many people who did many great things that some groups didn't want them to know about later on, but we should still be able to be allowed to ask the questions about that. Okay, winter solstice done. I'm going to watch this. Okay, now, because I thought that could be good.
For those of us in the Northern Hemisphere, December 21st marks the winter solstice. But what does that mean from an astronomical perspective? From Earth, no matter where you happen to be, the sun reaches in its southernmost position, according to NASA. Seen from the Northern Hemisphere, the sun makes its lowest, shortest path across the sky on December 21st. In terms of hours of sunlight, the solstice marks the shortest day of the year for the Northern Hemisphere and the longest for the Southern Hemisphere. The reason for the sun's changing height in the sky? Earth's tilt as it orbits. On the solstice, the North Pole is at its farthest tilt of 23.5 degrees away from the sun. It will be completely outside the sun's reach, experiencing 24 hours of complete darkness, according to earthsky.org. After the solstice, days will start getting longer again in the Northern Hemisphere. But the extra sunlight doesn't mean it will start getting any warmer. The oceans, which moderate temperatures on land, need vast amounts of solar energy to begin to heat back up. This year's solstice is especially unique, as it coincides with an event known as the Great Conjunction. Jupiter and Saturn will appear to almost touch, something which happens once every 20 years this century, according to NASA.
Yeah. I think actually that was actually a really good insight to some of the details regarding this time of the year, and even down to sort of how important I like the idea that, and the fact that the ocean is so important as well for how the planet operates and how these seasons are affected and affecting the oceans and how that affects us also. Now, it didn't actually show the depiction of where the sun sits on the horizon and seems to not move for a few days. Although we were aware that happens also, it did talk about other astrological alignments, for example. Believe it or not, at some point, maybe we can look at what would the impact be of those things on Earth, in the same way as we should look at, okay, well, how exactly does the moon control the tides? Because we know this is happening. Let's have a look at that. And if the moon's controlling the tides, what happens when there's an eclipse, for example? And so on, and so on, and so on. And we should be able to look at these things openly without the risk of being called witches or being persecuted by belief systems that ultimately were only ever there to control the flow of knowledge. Because this time of year, we should know about how to survive, how to create provisions. Because for all we know, this modern, very advanced world that we live in now may not be here forever. And just like we should know where a carrot comes from, a potato and otherwise, because believe it or not, it don't come from Tesco, well, it does sometimes. We need to know also where these things come from the ground and naturally. I think that's one thing that is often lost to our communities regarding how the world really operates and how it's been extrapolated and extracted to a plastic wrapped product on a shelf. And should that supermarket not be available for whatever reason, we need to know and should be able to know and teach our children, okay, well, this is how we provide food to ourselves during these times of year. I'll leave it there for now. Okay, and this is a brief description. I won't comment too much because you can read that for yourselves if you like. Pause it. Read a chat. Oh, now, this part here, maybe it's a bit more of a surprise because this is more about biblical and context biblically and about, okay, us really piecing together the human history story and being brave enough and having the critical confidence to actually ask questions that we shouldn't be apologizing for, especially not if there's no harm is done, actually. And it's about seeking the truth that will essentially set us free. So we're going to watch all of this, but to check it out.
This is the Bat Creek stone. It was found during the course of an official Smithsonian evacuation. The Smithsonian didn't understand the meaning of the writing on the stone. They thought it was Cherokee, since it came from Cherokee country. They didn't realize that it's actually Hebrew. They had published this originally upside down. They threw it in a box at the bottom of the Smithsonian, put it in the basement. Many years later, a scholar took it out of the box, looked at it, and went, oh my gosh, it's upside down. It's Phoenician, ancient Hebrew. So what's going on here? What is that about?
Barakatah Yahweh. Barakatah Yahweh.
Okay, so we won't answer that for too long. That was an example of essentially ancient texts and writings that were found in the Americas that are authenticated and done as found as part of an official excavation by the Smithsonian. I'm saying that because these aren't people forging things that are like in the back garden. These are texts which show an ancient old word connection, and it's not good enough for us to just throw that out the window, or throw it into the bin because it doesn't meet our existing idea out of a narrative that we know we have so many more questions about.
Well, we're here.
Another example.
At the Los Lunas Decalogue Stone, or near it. And according to many, the Los Lunas inscription is an abridged version of the Decalogue, or the Ten Commandments, carved into the flat face of a large boulder resting on the side of Hidden Mountain near Los Lunas, New Mexico. Well, we're here.
I'm going to skip forward just because we can get to the actual stone itself.
In just a few years, because Leah is sitting in a huge erosional channel.
Okay.
Line has been ruined.
Somebody's vandalized it, by the way. Somebody has vandalized some of that stone since our last read this. Oh. Did I say that ended up by accident?
Yeah, I'm not sure what's happened there, but we've lost
Okay.
the footage.
A second.
Well, we're
Okay.
Mm.
So this is another example of ancient Hebrew writing found in the Americas.
what do you got to say?
Something else about the erosion and this being at an angle.
Okay.
Lichen completely and patina and was hardly visible. And he was taken to the site by a guide who had seen it as a boy back in 1880. That's according to Tabor, 1997. At the present, the inscription itself is badly chalked and scrubbed up, as you can just see, because like we just showed you. And so it looks fake when you come up here.
So zoom in again. So
It is the Decalogue Stone.
are we ready to acknowledge this and ask the questions about, okay, is it possible? Because for us to assume it's not possible, we need to really look at, well, how can we justify that? There's evidence. And so are we saying it's complete forgery, even though it's been looked at and analyzed by professionals? Or are we going to say, okay, well, maybe it is possible that our ancient ancestors, who may have built pyramids and other things, for example, maybe we had boats, maybe they traveled, maybe they interacted with people. And we should be able to ask those questions critically and be willing to consider the reality of that, whatever the answers are. Okay. And that's it for the slides.
That's lovely. I like the message at the end there. Really fantastic, and a nice way to conclude what we were hoping to deliver this evening, which I think we did so successfully. And I think a few things as I was listening to you jumped out to me, and I've made note, and I'm going to share them with you now.
Come on.
And I think, it encompasses everything, and it's just that question, or there's three key questions really, and the questions for me are, who are we, or who are you? What is our purpose, or what is your purpose? And why are we in our current position, or why are you in your current position, right? And I know it sounds radical, but Christmas is involved in this, slavery is involved in this, our education system is involved in this. So I think if you can start with those three questions and begin to get answers to them, we put ourselves in a very powerful place, So that's what came out as I was listening to you and Nathan today. That's what I felt the need to, write down and scribble. Yeah.
Well, I think they're amazing questions. And I'll be working on that myself. Maybe we can do a show on that. Maybe get all people involved also. Because I think by identifying those things, if you're in a team sport, you need to know your position, your skills, and your attributes to where you fit into that team. Maybe some midfielders, maybe some forwards, maybe a goalkeeper. But unless we know our position, then we're not really going to know how and where we fit in best and contribute best. That's a very, very, very valuable question indeed.
Yeah, I'll keep hold of those and we'll dig more into them and begin to answer them together on the platform. Some of them we can do together. So thank you.
One thing I want to add as well, because sorry, I had to come off here because my door knocked in it, and it's a quick one. Okay. That cat that you just seen there, Miko, she was stuck in the tree. I had to climb a tree just now, just to.
Literally.
Yeah, literally on a thin branch. She was scared to jump. And my neighbor said, "Oh, your cat's meowing in the tree." But as I came in, I saw I was listening to what you was saying, Corey, about the Hebrew text, which is all the way in the Americas. And with that as well, just to add, definitely have a revisit about the things that evidence, so we can start putting more pieces to the puzzle together, so people can be more confident and make up their own mind and know what to do with what they know. And about all that Hebrew text, I remember when I brought something out in one of our sessions about how Columbus had to use the second book of Esdras in the Apocrypha to find out where were the other Hebrews, where were they, right? And finding, because that's to prove that we were already there before Columbus went there, because there's evidence, there's actual text and writings that was in Mesoamerica around those times as well. And also, I'm going to call my friend Kazak in Birmingham. He's got records, like the slave records, right, of where these people were from when they was enslaving them. And it had the tribe of Asher, which is one of the 12 tribes of Israel. He said Asherite, Asher. And and there's still some of them still in Africa as well at the same time. This is the interconnection. And what you were saying, Corey, about how we were already trading. So that's what made me research about, the Gulf Stream. So how ships, were able, that current, and then the drift, basically ships, we was able to trade between these places. This is why the relationships were still there. And before the 10 million went over there afterwards as well. So we talked about the Native Americans.
Sorry.
Or how many million, whatever. Right. How many? I don't know. I wasn't there to give the numbers. Yeah. But it's the interconnection. So we need to know. When you was talking about, Black Russians and all that, because that was before I grew up, and I heard about the term, the Black Russians, back in the day, but we wouldn't think about it like that. About all how we are. Yeah, exactly. And even Jason Scott Lee on the documentary in the Shaolin temples, and there's images of Black people there who taught them. So we can't fixate ourselves in one area when we've already explored the world before it was colonized. Do you know what I mean? So we were doing a lot. We're doing the most. So what's happened now? A lot of history's been.
Not from other humans.
Could have, because if you look at the record, in general. So you've got to remember, even when you read, in the Book of Kings, it was talking about we were going to take the whole Jericho story. We went over there. We took over that place. We were winning. This is even the empires that we had from way back. The Moorish times, the relation between the Arabic language and Spanish in itself as well. When we, in the antiquities of that, the ancient Hebrew language prior to Arabic even existing. So there's a lot, and we need to really go back and explore. I remember one time when I did my first podcast with Ms. Rootz way back, I did a biblical look at who are we in the Bible, and all that. And there's a lot of things which relate to it being also not just a book of laws and things and that, but there's history and historical evidence of things that occurred. So this is how you kind of have to cross-reference things that happen. Like, for example, the transatlantic slave trade was written before it happens. Like, what will happen if this happens? There's stipulations. So there's a lot. Like, it's just us being what's happened now. Yeah, it's all a dark area, as I say, and I'm gonna have to say a dark area, like quote unquote, that we don't really explore because we're not. When we try to talk about it, it's like, oh well, we're trying to find ourselves again in it. It's like that's why they call them the lost tribes of Israel, as one term to use.
Yeah, cool. I've got a question about the prophecy situation. I'm playing devil's advocate here. Can be playful.
Go for it.
So like prophecies like from Nostradamus, etc. Would that be seen as blasphemous regarding religion? But within the book itself, there is so-called prophecies being given. So I'm just trying to I'm just playing devil's advocate here about that whole idea of it was telling us something that happened, or would happen if such and such and such. But did it tell us how to prevent it happening?
This whole idea of blasphemy is, do you know what I mean? It stagnates the ability to think outside the box. So I think it's a method of control when people say things are blasphemous, because if you think you're going to go to hell for thinking outside the box, then you're going to restrict the circumference of your thinking, right? So, but in the Bible itself, it talks about people having dreams, right? It talks about people having dreams and coming down and saying that they have had a message from the Most High. And so is that not prophecy? Is that, so it's contradictory. This is why I'm saying that it's good to absorb lots of information, but you really have to then reflect and then identify what resonates with you. That's key. Otherwise, as I say, you're going to have information overload. And if you take everything as gospel, then you're going to be misinformed. So it's important, the reflection process. After you've absorbed a piece of information, it is important to then reflect on what you've just read. Right. So I think that's important to say. Exactly. I also want to quickly add about the slave trade. There's so much emphasis on the transatlantic slave trade, but we hardly ever speak about the slave trade that took place with the Arabs, right, on the continent.
Yeah.
Exactly. I find that very interesting.
Yeah. Or any other slave trade. There's only ever one of a slave trade. That's if you look. If that's somebody. They probably would actually think there's only ever been one slave trade, like actual slave trade. Oh, one person was captured like on that occasion, but slave trade that was that sort of that specific moment. That's the only time that's ever happened, and that's a great point. There are so many other times when similar things happened, and slavery, whether the conditions were exactly the same or not, there was people being enslaved. And I think one thing that's really important to note is that I think some of the narrative we have with slavery is that somebody saw somebody over there and just wanted to go and snatch them up. And most times it was war-based. So there was a war, possibly for resources or other things, or for land, gold, etc. And then if they won that war, or won that battle, they'd end up capturing people and putting them to work. And I think that's a really important part of the narrative, because this is a war situation, slavery, more so than just, one big bad bully came and just snatched up somebody like that, for example. Which, even if you look at, say, the inter-African slave trades that happened, did so on that basis. There was inter-tribal wars. If one tribe won, they may put the other peoples to work. In fact, because it was preferable to not kill somebody in many traditions, putting them to work was a great way, because they lived. You got extra work. There was no bloodshed. And don't get me wrong, I'm talking about the inter sort of African slave trade here specifically, and maybe other inter-American slave trades, for example, that happened based on, again, these are war captives. And so when we're given this narrative of slavery, I do think that most of the time we've got often a very false but a very prominent message in our mind, in the same way that people have very strong ideas of Egypt and Egypt culture because of movies. And then still got a lot of ideas of that because of movies. And if you was to watch, I don't know, Gods of Egypt. Have you watched Gods of Egypt, for example?
Yeah.
No, I haven't watched it.
So don't get me wrong, there's lots of really meditative things there, but also lots of other things there as well that actually aren't culturally or yeah. But it's easy to be like, okay, well, it must have been because it's on there. I mean, if you watch old Moses movies, for example, and those movies there, like these movies are burnt into people's minds, and that imagery and that aesthetic is the first go-to. But if you actually think about that situation, it's actually quite different. And so it's okay that they created art as long as we're aware of the event that actually happened.
Yeah.
And also, if we need to, any other aspects of the aesthetic and so on.
I think just quickly touching on that. I mean, as I say, we'll do a whole show about slavery, but I think it's important to kind of state that I think that's what humans do to each other, right? We have done. There's certain things that we do as humans all the time throughout our ever existence, and one of them is enslave each other, war with each other, love each other, hate each other, right? This is we're human, right? But I also want to state that slavery evolves.
Yeah.
So are we is a slavery now? And if so, what does it look like, right? So just plant those seeds for our conversation, because we're in slavery that we're living in right now, and it's not the transatlantic slave trade, but what we're going to call it. How are we going to
slave trade?
I'm glad that you've said that, Miss Rootz, because this is the reason why we're talking about slavery today and what it looks like, because the best form of slavery is where you won't think that you're a slave anymore. It's just the same way when we did the analogy.
Linking it back to today's discussion, Christmas, right? Yes. And it's links to slavery. I was made to do things I didn't really want to do over this period, right? I was kind of mentally, socially, culturally forced into a practice of festivities that did not reside with me, but I had to do it because of social, economical, and all of the pressures. So is that a type of slavery? Do you know what I mean? So
that's a good point, actually, because that's a good point, actually. And it's not like you could have not gone to work and not lived and bought food and survived. And so again, so that actually is a good point about
here's a heavy one.
Freedom.
Sorry, go on, carry on.
And I think many of us don't really feel very free right now. And so, I mean, there's definitely something happening. And I think if you was to categorize it, look at conditions, in many cases, what we're going through right now in some areas of our life actually isn't that much different in reality. It actually isn't. I mean, you could tell, of course it is, but say that to, I don't know, some of the poor victims that may get, I don't know, end up getting terribly hurt by the police, for example, or the security for the so-called economic state and so on, and because they don't agree or whatever, or people that maybe are persecuted or alienated that because they're not talking about things in the way they want to talk about, behaving in that way. And so there's a lot of, I think, forced actions, forced culture, and forced obedience. I think in things that may actually not be, although for me, it's not so much the solstice practice specifically, but the many aspects of that possibly, and other things that actually aren't in my well-being necessarily, or in many people's well-being. We're doing it because we kind of have to. And if we don't, the punishment is often too great.
We definitely have to do discussion on this, because I'm taking notes now, guys. We definitely have to do this about this slavery in today's slavery and how it's been put out there, because there's a few examples. I don't want to say things now because it'll trigger a whole new conversation. But we definitely have to look into that. It's very important.
Let's plan for the next session to be about slavery, because it's organically happened, right? Yeah. So the next time we do a Sunday session, let's let that be the topic. So anybody that's watching this now, that's what we're going to do next. We'll plan a show. But I think that's just an absolute perfect way to start wrapping up the show. Because it was about Christmas, the festivities, what it really means. And in conclusion, a lot of us have been doing this against our spirit, against our will, right? Yeah. Which links to this notion of slave.
Yeah, you're calling them on, bro. Exactly. You've coined that one very well. So yeah, defo we'll do that, because exactly like we've been subject to things that we don't understand. And now, and even the worst part is when you know and you still end up doing it, even though you don't want to. Exactly. Again, it's against your will, but they give you the illusion of choice. Let me give you one example. For example, you know, during COVID, like it's COVID now, yeah, certain people had to have the vaccine for them to have to work in certain industries. They had the choice to say no, but if they said no, they cannot work. So certain people, when I used to work for the COVID response team, I'm there taking calls, people requesting them to go and get the vaccine. I've had people on the phone to me saying, I don't even want it, I have to because I need to go and feed my children. So it's a form of forced labor, but you still got the choice to, they give you the illusion of choice. You can make decisions, but there's going to be ramifications with the decisions that you make, and it can go against you. So it's like, we never forced you. No one put a gun to your head. So it's kind of some weird reverse psychology on you, but you have to, because you need to feed your fam. So you're in a submissive situation. So that's a different element of slavery.
Yeah, I think, and also the idea of aggression and force. There are many ways to force somebody, you could say, and coerce somebody. It's not always going to be so overt and obvious as holding guns to them. As long as there's consequences involved, you could use that as leverage potentially. I think that's a great example of where leverage is used often, and it's also it's quite concealed and covert. Especially considering the fact that actually now we're being told actually we should have been asking questions. Not we should have, but there was questions that should have been asked. It wasn't as safe as they said it was safe, and it didn't work as well as they said it would work. And there were already other things that could have worked technically equally as well. And so if you think about that whole narrative, and earlier on we were talking about even the whole slavery thing, how there were specific groups that are often sort of like identified as not wanting to participate. And how that kind of like was perpetuated quite a lot as well. Oh, this group here, I need extra encouragement because they don't really want to have the COVID vaccine. Let's help them, nudge them along. It wasn't explained why that might be. And the truth of the matter is that those that were concerned now have had their concerns validated pretty much completely. And so the question really is that maybe we should be listening to y'all. I'm joking, but those people that were making these statements, oh, is it actually safe though after about 30 years and so on? We should really be respecting them and be at least be acknowledging actually that their questions were valid then, and no one should be forced to do something to their body like that. Even if it didn't have any consequences, even if it never had consequences, to force someone to that to their body, I would say is an abuse of power. Personally, I would say it is. Yeah, to force someone to have any of a drug.
Exactly.
Imagine if they said, for whatever reason, you don't come into work and you smoke a spliff. I'm not like, spliff cures COVID. You better take that spliff, y'all, before you come into work. I'm joking. But like, or another kind of drug that we think, oh, that's now illegal. Like, whoa. Many people are like, let's run that. I'm joking. But at the same time, people are like, oh, I mean, you shouldn't have to force me to take that drug in order to work. That's wrong. They say straight away, that's wrong. Even though cannabis has been around for 1,000 or more years, so we do know the consequences of cannabis and so on. It's wrong. I think the comparison.
I think what was even more wrong was that silencing of the mouth about it. Like, not only are you having to take this, but you're not allowed to talk about it either. And if you talk about it in public, we're going to cancel you. Close down your social media platforms. Like, what the hell happened? So,
and it got worse here, where you couldn't even leave the country without it as well. You couldn't even travel.
Like plantation restrictions. Is that?
I mean, let's pick this up and go into real detail with this next week.
Yeah, definitely.
I think that's we're in a good position now to reflect on that period. I remember at the heights of that period, people were scared to even say the word online, just in case their channel got shut down. That's how bad it was. But a lot of people are now reflecting on that situation, and we're now allowed to, because they got what they wanted, right? Whatever it is, whatever the agenda was, the box has been ticked. So, okay, we can allow them
Exactly.
to talk about it now, right? So, but it's important to have it on record and on our platform, to be fair. So,
Definitely, yeah. I think that would
Yes,
definitely
we'll do.
play well into the whole sort of control and slavery aspects, I think.
yeah.
And to understand it as well, because I even want to. Yeah, we'll definitely do it because obviously it's something that's been put. Even the government, they've actually acknowledged it because they've got things like when you look in contracts at work, you've got the Modern Day Slavery Act and all that stuff as well. So they understand there's certain things that happen today. So there's restrictions, but the only reason why they've got it there because they call it an act because they've actually acknowledged it. So it's not like a dark area. So it is something there which is as it's not discussed. So we're going to discuss it more next week. Hopefully.
Well, maybe not modern day slavery. Well, modern day slavery too, but I think because modern day slavery technically by legislative means and that act is not so much what we're talking about now. That's more akin to where people are being actually entrapped or being coerced by other groups, not so much the state themselves, which does exist.
Mm-hmm.
At least
Exactly.
that's the situation, I think.
Well, we'll talk about all aspects of slavery.
Yeah.
Well, because as you said earlier, when people say slave, they think of this primitive type of slavery where someone's taken from Africa, brought over to England, and forced to do whatever. But actually, there's multiple depictions of what slavery looks like, including the modern day slavery, mental slavery, and slaveries that we're about to define.
Even medical slavery, even for example.
That's right. I think there's room there for concepts to be coined, right? So let's play around with that next week.
Okay.
Yeah, let's begin to wrap up now because, as you know, we can talk for 24 hours. We've done it before. And
I've got to eat and I've got to sleep. Yeah, I'll go back into my studies tomorrow. So yeah. All right then. Yeah. So
any last words? Any last thoughts? Any conclusions?
Are we going to recap offline as well? Are we offline now? Are we? Or?
Do you want to reflect? No, we're still live now.
Yeah. Well,
so,
that'll be good.
Yeah, well, just a quick reflection. But let's just wrap up now for our subscribers. Any last thoughts? Any comments? Anything you want to wrap up on?
Yeah, I just want to say thank you. Sorry. Thank you. So yeah, just basically I want to say thank you to everyone. But even before I get there, I'm just glad that we did touch down on this. So now to conclude, we've got more of an understanding of things that we are, many of not all, but many of us were blind to, and still wiping the sleep out of our eyes. You wake up a little bit, get triggered, but there's still more. There's still more to wake up to. So at least we're waking up in that sense, but there's still a lot more. So with the whole antiquity of Christmas and the different aspects before it was even called Christmas, because even when you put Miss Rootz, when you put the Christmas tree up, that there's been there before Christmas. It was written about the Christmas tree in the Bible before Christmas even existed, before Christianity even existed. So all of that. So at least everyone has more of an understanding of what they're delving into. It's by choice. Everyone each their own. You can do it even with knowing. Do you still want to continue with that flow, or continue to educate, or continue to find out more, be more critically confident about it? That's perfect. But I want to say a big thank you to those that's coming. Even Todd won, Mr. Uganda, because I think has Mr. Uganda been in before?
No.
Well, yes, and obviously Chrissy and Christine, and obviously I remember you guys. So thank you so much, and anyone else that's been there, that's just been in the background, just taking into account what's going on. And thank you so much, and I hope to see you soon. And with that, obviously on the bottom, you can see how to get in contact with En Route on the website, which is www.enroute23.com, and also you can follow us on YouTube at En Route 23, and you can find us on the other platforms that's there as well. So just get in contact.
Thank you for that, Nathan. Lovely. Corey?
Yeah, to be honest, I say thanks for everybody that contributed and created some really great comments and some great questions. They really help us sort of identify direction as well. And I think without the questions, you don't know what you don't know until you don't know it kind of situation. And so that's really, really important. So thank you everybody that has questions and that was commenting in the chat and interacting. Thanks a lot. It was pretty amazing. I mean, there was some really good comments in there as well. Some really good comments that triggered critical thinking. Oh, and on the back of your comment you made as well, up there, Nathan, up there. I would say that, like, yeah, a lot of these traditions existed. I would say even post biblical text documentation. I think that's something to kind of note as well, that pre-biblical text documentation, like I said, humans have did practices for long, very, very long. Arguably, some of these practices, for example, of I don't know, earthing or even using, say, the solstice tree for medicine and stuff, technically that may have been around before we've even learned to write, potentially. Bear in mind that writing and advanced skills come from often from certain levels of civilization and agriculture and having the time and leisure to do those things. And so I think that these traditions, we can still probably ask a lot more questions about them. I think what we should probably do is try and locate the core values of them that we're kind of happy with, if we are going to practice or not, and at least know about the falsehoods that are associated with it separately. Oh, and there could have been so much more we talked about, by the way, and that we didn't get into Krampus at all. We didn't get into Krampus at all, really, with that. Or and also the other aspects of the sort of the snow, not the snowman we think of snowman, but there's an aspect of a nature Santa kind of thing. I didn't get to that as well, which is quite interesting.
The abominable snowman, the Yeti.
That was a bit hedonistic, or like a bit like, I don't know, a bit pagan-esque. It's basically like a Santa of the woodlands, like a woodland Santa kind of situation. But I think we did get some really great aspects of that too. And I think that one of the really good points that were made is about how much is it okay, if it is okay at all, for us to lie to our children. I think that's a really important point, because if we think about, if it was the other way around, it was a partner, that's another partner, would it be classified as gaslighting? If like a man was saying to a woman, or a woman saying to a man, "Oh, this is going to happen if you don't cook me food or have sex with me or give me some money," I'm pretty sure it would be pretty abusive, I would say.
That's manipulation, isn't it? So that's what I'm saying. And like, it's funny enough, even with that, there's a friend of mine here that had a situation with the school, because they said, "Oh, it's one of these, oh, if you don't do this, you're not going to get this." Is kind of like like some narcissistic control behavior, like saying, like, you rather than having that reward mentality, "Oh, well done for doing this, here's an incentive." But then when it's like that forced labor, if you don't do this, you still have the choice, even talking to your children. If you don't do this, then it's a form of punishment in that sense. But you don't want to make your child to feel like discouraged, like, "Oh, I need to do this, otherwise it's ain't going to happen." You got to tell them the benefits of doing that duty. That's good for them. Not, "Oh, if you don't do this, you're not going to get any presents. If you don't do this, I'm taking your PS away from you." No, if you do this, then you're going to learn how to survive. Like, for example, cleaning your house, hygiene. Or if you don't clean your room, you're not going to get any gifts or this and that. Or you're going to be grounded if you don't do that. You should be first at one point showing them the benefits of doing this, to be clean, to go and bath, to cook food, to clean up after yourself. We don't really explain the benefits a lot. We talk, it's usually clean your room or else. It's a threatening behavior. Like, you need to show them what's good about it, and obviously you teach them the benefits of doing that duty. Like even going to work. This is why when you go to apply for a job, for example, you look at the benefits, like what you're gonna, like, you've got good healthcare, like, a good pension, this and that, and whatnot, and the third. So you can, like, say again.
Go on, carry on. I was going to say.
Say again.
I was going to say. Carry on. I was going to say. We can probably talk about some of these things when we go offline, if you wanted to. I was thinking because.
Yeah, right. Yeah, true. That was supposed to be closing. My bad. Yeah, we'll explain further.
Again, thank you. Well, but if we talk about the elves, which might seem a bit silly, but the actual origins of that kind of narrative and who was making the toys. And so, like, people were making some of the toys. Some people were harvesting some of the berries and the fruits, for example, that were helping some of these often priests or holy people to do this job. And that's something also to note too. We didn't get into that whole sort of like who are the elves, but that's great too. And I think what we should be able to do is talk about the actual events that were happening, because they were actually were truly magical and heartwarming. and great deeds of good and so on. And then also, okay, if you want to go in and join in with other aspects, well, how can we do that when without you sort of being gaslit, or be happy to participate? And afterwards, don't be hating on people for thinking that, oh, we've lied or been deceitful to you, if possible. So I think personally, I don't think there's any need to lie about this at time of the year. Personally, I think we could tell the truths, the many truths, and it'd be just as magical if it need be. That's what I think. I'll leave it there.
Yeah, I agree with that. There's a lot of mystics already for us to try and work out what's going on in our existence without adding Santa Claus and his elves, right? Which just absolutely confuses things even more when there's enough that we don't know. So, you know, for me, I just want to end by saying, and we touched on it earlier, that for me, the purpose of life is to experience. We are reflections of the Most High, right, in physical form, right? The Most High is experiencing this creation through us. We are the vessels of the divine, right? So how much are things like Christmas restricting my freedom to do that? And that's what it is for me. How much of these things that are in place is stunting my potential, my growth, our growth, right? Because we're having to battle all these other barriers and all these other things that stop you from doing what it is you really, really want to do, right? Or achieve, or be, or experience. So that's how I want to conclude it. Christmas is just one thing. There are other things. I'm sure it's like every month we have a celebration in the West, right? Which is just hindering on multiple levels, financially, you know, and all of the above. So that's what I'd like to leave you with regards to how I'd like to conclude this evening. Yeah. So, but I also want to say thank you for everybody that engaged. All the comments that were left in the live chat were amazing. This platform is designed for discussion. So I do encourage, if you're not comfortable to come on the main screen as we are, then to please engage with the comments, because it's all valuable. And as Nathan and Corey said, it helps us to make a decision on what we want to talk about next, because ultimately this is for you. It's a community-based channel, and that's why we're here, right? So I just want to thank you two as well, Nathan and Corey, for always being here and so committed to the cause and chiming in on the levels that you do. Corey, your slides were amazing today, as normal. Well thought through, very diligent. Nathan, your content with regards to biblical references is always on point. I really feel like that's one of your many specialisms, and I'm just really grateful to have crossed paths with you both and to be here building this together. We've got lots more ideas, lots more things we want to do in 2024, so I look forward to seeing when and how we manifest them, my brothers. Yeah, so let's leave that there, unless there's anything else you want to say. If not, we'll go through to our advert and end the live stream, but stay on so we can reflect.
Thank you.
That's still Corey then. But
yeah, anyway. Water.
Okay, well, if that's the case, we'll end it right there. So we're going to go over to our general ad, and then we look forward to seeing you all soon with another Sunday session. So take care, everybody, and have a good week.